Oh boy, so the Red Flood ideology re-reworked. I'm going to be reading all of them. And very much pretty much though, if I do, I've seen the pause over here in the recording, it's basically just going to be taking breaks over here to rest my throat from talking so much over here, because there's going to be a lot of talking over here. Basically, I'm going to be reading them out, giving them my own thoughts over here. Be sure to give your thoughts about these two over here in the comment section. I make community posts about this. Probably will do that. But yeah, very much Jesus Christ. Very much lots of new things coming out already, and 2.4.2 is gonna be coming out very soon. Based upon this, hopefully soon. Very much so gonna do some check out over here. A lot of interesting stuff at the very least. But yeah, we're gonna go from bottom to top, not top to bottom over here, because I want to save your boys' stuff for last. So we're talking about the big four, the reactionaries. With aristocratic reaction. Civilization's long marched by more sophisticated forms of stratification. Upper castes of martial strength were joined by those knowledge and stature justified by divinity or breeding. This notion that the master should steer the state was solely by problems of heretics and brigands, respected by largely endured until late enlightenment. Alas, man's appetite grows to match that he consumes. What was the blink of an eye historical terms, populism and the spectre of egalitarianism upended this social order. Now, astride the oceans of blood spilled for such ideals, there is an uprising against the errors of modernity. Rather than meek acceptance of the throne, the active counter-argument of aristocratic reaction. Underpinning this tendency and recognition of the inequality of man and understanding of its consequences, where can the politics of the mob lead but the great want of revolutions in 1919? What does representative democracy privilege if not beguiling and planning that only extends to the next election? Accordingly, the prescribing leads regime court politics conducted by the aristocracy prepared the rule, to lead and protect their subjects. The involvement of the public is accordingly limited to officially sanctioned channels, the festive or the pogrom, and suppressed elsewhere. Aristocratic reaction represents an old ethos meeting modern problems. A world after the guillotine, industrialization, and levy en masse has broken with the past. But the past can be reconnected forward through the creation of more durable traditions. For instance, what this model rests on is not necessarily an aristocracy around broken lineages of the past kings, but traits of nobility such as culture, faith, and blood. Additionally, despite the aversion to hallmarks of the French Revolution, the necessity of national defense still tends to produce centralized states rather than feudal ones. And of course, the unwashed masses must come to understand the appeal of this ideology again after such a long dormancy. So it approaches on horseback, promising an end to the disintegration of your world and a return to principles once recognized as natural. Basically, Julius Evola in a nutshell. Our timeline, Julius Evola. Like, this is basically love here. Basically, pretty much does his whole thing about, like, you know, that, like, radical, traditional, just super reactionary. Like, this is reactionary at extreme. Like, literally bringing back the past to the future, to the present, really, not the future. Well, I guess technically to the future as well, but pretty much the past, all about the past. Like, holy shit, dude. But much don't give me Evola vibes. But I don't know if he's gonna. I don't know. That's gonna be his thing, or that's gonna be someone's thing. I'm very much interested to see who will have this. Very interested, very curious, very intrigued. And this reactionary esotericism. Theocracy is simply the five political organization as we know. Could a populist tide rallied by demigods hope to understand the complex truths? Will the vanguard of materialists or decayed aristocracy redeem themselves in their countries by all past evidence to the contrary? Can mankind put its faith in religious institutions that have gone fat and weak after papering over primordial truth with their doctrine? Was the answer then? To the collapse of the meaning, to the degradation of generational order. For the man striving backwards, seeking a similar unlikely lead to march alongside, there is the school of reactionary esotericism. Civil society is in search of hidden spiritual knowledge of the age-old future civilization. But where this form differences is yearning for the past, certainly. And all the hemispheres have an organization that delved into taboo spirituality, often brought outside the mainstream of local religion or syncretic with foreign faith. Breaking up the Assyrian regime in Europe, and a further disruption of the traditional social order around the world, but produced conditions where private orders could be aligned against a new status quo of liberalism, secularism, and Empiricism. After all, what was the war of the Enlightenment, for example, if it separated man from true being, alienated from the condition of modernity? These disciplines make up many varied schools, but generally emphasize an ancient metaphysical wisdom that have lost to the world. The task then is to bring it back to light. Also, sorry if you can hear a dog barking outside. I don't know, barking a lot. I don't know what's going on with them. Seeing anything, but anyways, translating reactionary esotericism into a political move is no small task. Truly in nature to compete in parliamentarism, societies may work on a parallel power structure of influence, even within the existing party. So like puppet party, basically. Alternatively, their organization and spiritual nature can aid in coordinating extra parliamentary activities. So basically, they can like work in the shadows for the weird stuff. While the final detail of Esoteric's program will differ from place to place, the agenda's power retains the central character. The worthy of the country are initiated into society and positioned to rule over the rest, who the past centuries have utterly failed to themselves. It's basically like the fucking Society or whatever the fuck Himmler was doing. It's basically what it's very much so like mystical, traditional shit. That's very much an interesting thing, at the very least. Very interesting stuff over here. Now, give me this fundamentalism over here because I want to save the most common one, reactionary populism, for last. With this fundamentalism, this is a fallen world. The oaths and moral principles are spiritually have been destroyed, discarded. Human intermediaries of holy measures are bent to need the temporal power, deluding its commandants in their weakness. People have lost their way, serving only material ends of their current own passions, and unaware of the cost incurred. Look, well, these days are not the end times. The Great Tribulation, the Ragnarok, the Kali Yuga, the Seven Suns. But like many before them, some have responded to this crisis and meaning by returning to the first principles of the culture to take up the metal of religious fundamentalism. Also, you two are watching this. I'm reading shit off the internet. I don't believe in this crap. Oh, fuck. Yeah, that should kill it for you. Oh, Jesus Christ. Sorry about that. I need a drink of water and point out the wrong pipe. God damn. It really is the end times when I'm fucking dying and recording. Holy shit. Anyways, while the panacea offered by this ideology will always differ by the faith animated in it, the framework is similar, describing government by the tenets of religion with very little room for pragmatism and reinterpretation. So orthodoxy of any religion. Hardcore orthodoxy of any religion. Imperium of man, even. Yeah, this is a long. This is a long on both of these, anyway. If you know 40k, we should basically explain it. At times, the hierarchy of the church and sect becomes that of the nation, and the holy men transform into government officials alongside the laymen, and not replacing them entirely. In some cases, the god or another immaterial figure may become the official head of state. Kind of like in Kaiser Reed, that's why you can make Jesus an actual head of state in America. Anyway. Making clear what values are to be enshrined in day-to-day government, the state accordingly uses power to bring the world agreement with a spiritual ideal. While religious fundamentalism may seem unchanging throughout time, it presents form of a very deliberate reaction to modernity. The historical tend to the division of religious and political power in one cause. For example, another is the appearance of former technology ideas by trade or colonialism that threatens the political autonomy and spiritual well-being of the masses, because getting good shit is somehow a bad thing, rather than making that good shit into your part of this. Who do I fucking know? But above all, is currently a reaction to the age of disorder. Where man's understanding of his place in the world, his goals, his belonging to a community are in question. Scab and materialism, iconoclasm, and liberal individualism. Many responses to animalization, alienation, and envy exist, but the values of it endure for centuries, even millennia have changed. Will crack the earth and sky when wills to defend itself. Religious. Just like extreme religious stuff with no deviation, no pragmatism, no reinterpretation, all that stuff. Very much the hardline religious stuff, and it's very much not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. Because When you leave no room for pragmatism and interpretation, you're stagnating and decaying into basically shooting yourself in the foot so that way some other bigger power can come in and fuck you over. Pragmatism talking. Anyway. So we got reactionary populism, I read that wrong. Progress is a myth. If not for he who suffered it, the turning point of history, the events that have become common knowledge, were mankind by those who sought to turn it back. Where there was the French Revolution for republic and liberty, there was the Reactionary for the throne, altar, and old rights. Where European power influence entered the Far East, peasants united between the twin cries to revere the emperor and expel the barbarian. At the hand the people rises or strike what is disturbed, take the shape of reactionary populism. It is important to remember that the present moment that is being reacted against is a moving target. The current incarnation of the reactionary tendency is not necessarily against republicanism and nationalism, for instance, but the second industrial revolution and what followed. In the face of massive disruptions to the economy, the landscape of the homes, the labor unrest, and politicization of the increased secularization of public life, the backlash could be apocalyptic. Certainly, before revolution were described as the cure to its malaise, but this same milieu produced the nativist anti-socialist movements of the Anti-Semitic League of France or the Black Hundreds in Russia. The Greek War only solidified the desire of such organizations to look backwards for salvation. If my daughter led to such a crisis, what use was it? But the fate of French monarchism, thus the inability of arrive Russia to crown a czar, thus far from traditionalist tendency, has remained in common hands, common ideals. Reactionary populism, ideatic past, to return to will differ between contexts, but generally has the same core tenets: faith, tradition, and identity. Be it race, nationality, or the same other cultural label. Hostile to liberalism and socialism, the popular nature of its politics nevertheless often allow for some variety of political participation, as well as a break from capitalism, both merciless and red in tooth. In the face of upheaval, this is the flag carried by men who are willing to shed blood to restore order and meaning to an alienated people. This is basically like those I want to adhere to the past because of the crises that are happening birth 1936 over here and all sorts of this stuff over here. Pretty much to anyone that feels like the past provide a much better and stable society compared to what is currently being out over here, which makes sense over here. It's very much always a common ideology like Scythia, for example. Much all about that bringing Scythia to the modern times over here, like not bringing back Scythia as it was over here, like the bows and horsemen, but like the ideas of it, and you know, just be brutal as fuck, and all sorts of other stuff over there. And fuck, what was it? What was the other reactionaries? Shit. Not Sternberg. He's esoteric. Shit, I can't remember which other reactionaries are. Oh yeah, the Iron Guard Cordial now. Want to bring them back more like traditional Romania, but with the people and less over there. Not a lot of reactionary I can think on top of my head over there. That's surprising. You said I know like a few more people that, but I guess I haven't similar. There hasn't really been much reactionaries. Congress Delta Roshi had a reactionary path over here. Very much I'm keen on that one at some point. Hopefully they get like some kind of reactionaries. I don't think it's gonna be like a Radzievsky thing, but very much would like to see a reactionary path over here. Now on to despotism. On the absolute monarchy. In nearly all of its modern direction, monarchy is diminished, liberalized form, more accurately described as crown republics. Most royals are now restricted by checks and balances like constitutional democratic elected parliaments. Kings and queens are above figureheads of the kingdoms. However, the old maxim, render unto Kaiser what is Kaiser, is not yet forgotten. Absolute monarchy is the accumulation of all power and prerogative in the realm into the hands of a single man or woman, who usually by birthright is entitled to rule and administer the land as president, conqueror, and lord of all before him. This is the result of centuries upon centuries of fierce struggle against the nobility and bourgeois alike. Ultimate confirmation of the incarnation of the whole country is the king himself. The monarch is the intermediary between his subjects and the divine, any form it may take. In the health and holiness of his royal body politic. is the health and wholeness of the whole society. For the more traditional minded and the royal affirm that the king is the sun, and every celestial body orbits and is attracted by its power and majesty. The term absolute, however, may be deceiving. Even the monarch can interfere in all spheres of his domain, he is still limited by a series of restrictions. Among them, it may be that he cannot contradict the fundamental laws of the realm that he himself is subject to. He could also need to go against morality or challenge the natural law whose principle governs the positive law of the realm. His absoluteness also does not imply omnipresence, and the cohort administrates the government instead are given. So technically, it's not absolute monarchy. It is like the king has a lot of power, but he still needs like people that know and can do shit, because he can't do everything by himself. No matter how smart or great he is, he can't do everything. Which makes sense. So it's not true absolutism, but whatever. Most of the last old-fashioned monarchies have been dethroned after the Great War, but by republics of all kinds of colors. This is far from the death blow to the idea of monarchy. The great houses and support still stand proud, located the fortresses across the world, waiting for the right time to strike back against the revolution, leaning into mistake to giving communists and monarchies even the slightest opportunity to gain power, the first towards the reclamation of divine right through any means at their disposal. So it's just a Yodi monarchy, basically. Nothing too much about them. Yeah, constitutional dictatorship over here. See, new a bit. There are times, and there is no shame in admitting it, when the system is simply not strong enough to withstand the full weight of its challenges. This will usually be a ripe type of opportunity for revolutionaries to strike like vultures, devouring carrion. However, rather than letting the country fall to these insidious forces, the state may save the day by appointing a constitutional dictator until the country is healthy enough to stand on its own again. So, like the dictators in Rome. Yeah, because they were elected and they were supposed to step down after. They were elected when a crisis happens, and then they would step down when the crisis ended. To the Republic of Rome over here, until like Caesar did this whole thing with the Rubicon and all that stuff. Anyways, a constitutionally appointed dictator figure that in exceptional times are temporarily clothed with special powers. Though the authority of the legitimate government in order to overcome certain political and military crises, the president has been felt ever since rebound even in the Greek world, but in the most popular thanks to the ancient Roman Republic. For a moment, we can draw useful similes that will illustrate the many forms of particular illustrations they take. It could be that a given dictator, the king Canitus, a man committed to the principles and legality of the system who will attempt to certainly fix issues that threaten the country, and who will step down after his mission is complete, restoring the state enormously with unbroken continuity. Perhaps he is rather a Sulla, a vigorous leader who nonetheless still committed to the values of the institution that empowered him, will enact a number of reforms to remove the cancerous rot that weakened the system in the first place. But after him, a new healthier but still recognizable state of affairs become the norm. In the unfortunate case of the system bestowing powers to the dictator, we will promote a Kaiser. A Kaiser, an ambitious and shrewd politician who has turned the due process to the system against it, and will use the extraordinary powers to boil Rome after his own age and overcome the constitutional and legal limits of its current mandate. I wonder if we'll see all three of these happen in a game, though. We probably expect at least one of each of these three events to occur over here with this constitutional dictator. The exact limits of a dictator's jurisdiction and abilities varies in accordance to the trust and needs of government who bestow him. But generally, there are certain safety clauses placed to ensure no lines to cross the danger of certain decisions not absolutely apparent. Among the many uncertainties lies the question of if the dictator is not willing to step down, whether he be followed by Brutus or by an Octavian. Yeah, that's definitely a problem over there. Very much I'm keen to see how that's going to be over there, because very much so it's going to replace like some of the other dictators. Like, I wonder what Balbo is going to be after this. Probably like a Revenat or something. We shall see. Anyway, constitutional monarchy. If we consider history as a linear progression, we can see a clear view of the evolution of political institutions, from the god kingdom antiquity to the Roman monarchy, passing through feudal vassalage and enlightened absolutism. We reach the zenith, the climax, the height of perfect rule here in the modern world, the constitutional monarchy. Also ambiguously called parliamentary or democratic, this form of monarchy is a testament to the indisputable triumph of liberalism, understood in its wide definition. It represents an overcoming the antiquated despotism that dominated Asian regime Europe and much of the Asia up until the 19th century, a process of anarchism that wouldn't and couldn't recognize the new era approaching, tied to efficiency, moderation, long-term continuity, and professionalism based. Yet it acknowledges the horrors of tyranny of the majority, the existence of republicanism, revolutionary populists unable to withstand the limitations of democracy and dominate in the most savage ugliness. Use also written and a traditional constitution as well as representative democracy as the trustworthy allies of society of politicians who work within the respects of for more individual freedom to achieve the reform needed to prosper, like they talk of it, constant in luck for so. Civil society can only exist in a healthy mixture of limitation and liberty. Giving a voice to the people but never letting their voice and politics take control. Keeping the kings and queens is warrant to liberty rather than threats to it. So, no mob rule are absolutists. He has triumphed in the UK, Italy, and Netherlands, among others, and even westernized the nation also have recognized the strength that the only path towards safe and free future that doesn't wait for anyone. Elsewhere, however, the tale is on the street, and the democratic limitations placed on monarchs aren't as famous to exercise power to prison that ambitious to strike to brave and escape from by any means necessary. And yet, isn't this proof of his versatility as a tool? Isn't the sound of oppression gnashing your teeth as the sign of it works? That naivety, common sense, and rationality marches across time incarnated constitutional monarchy to the horrors of radicals of all camps. So basically, what we get over here is just the olden, it's just Britain. That's basically it. That's pretty much just the UK in a nutshell. It's all forms, as a word. All forms and all stuff. Very much so. Very much looks like, just fucking constitutional monarchy. As it says, what we just got over here. Oh, it's military dictatorship. Force is a simple thing to understand. It is a period of perceived loss of legitimacy. A state may find that heavy weapons or organization to use them effectively outweigh generations of civic norms and tradition. Whether he an invitation to illegal citizenship or launching a cruel response to natural crisis, power does masses in the hands of hierarchy of armed forces as the collective junta is formed, or the clear generalissimo leading a charge. So begins a period of military dictatorship. This form of government has been documented for over a millennia in human history, such as its versatility and such as the ensuing presence of military authority at time. Its factual enough in form and character to theoretically encompass the feudal showwoods of the Far East, the personalist caudillos of Latin America, or even the highly religious rule of 1930s Commonwealth of England. Basically, whatever the underlying ideology of the genuine dictatorship would declare it's not part of nature, and that's overall goal to avert the dire threat to the country. Bureaucratic reality of modern military rule also varies, at times being a top-down emergency government, and other times create a political party out of willing civilian collaborators to support their agenda. Kind of like a fucking, what was it? It was like, might as well be Kona or something. No, timeline over there. Yeah, pro-German, Russian collabs during World War II. It's akin to that though, but as I said, there are a lot of other examples. That's what immediately popped into my head. Anyway, the military dictatorship practice introduces a state of deception in society of foreign affairs. The U.S. sits on rights and guaranteed reshape and disband outright with militarized police in the streets and secret police in the shadows. Though non-military officials and politics exist, subject to the ruling clique's veto. Finally, while the regimes often frame themselves as temporary measure, the duration temporarily subject to their whims. After all, the remaining lifespan of a general or two is still temporary. Despite this, emergency measures to avert disasters are justified and that the cloud of war gathered. Say first going prepare for mobilization. So basically fucking Myanmar timeline. Fucking military government for like God knows how long, and then now they're still doing that shit. Yeah, it's pretty much Yodi military government and the various throughout history and all that stuff. It doesn't really much. Anyway, personalist dictatorship. Listen, TNO actually. Power is a complex, brutal, repeated thing. The ambition and corruption of men have provoked in thus. Power is organized in order according to a variety of principles such as inheritance, religious authority, military command, or people democratically elected representatives. In truth, this is a mirage. Power gets into those who dare conquer it. Reminds you of fucking great man theory. Something like that. Fucking who knows. German sociologist Max Weber is associated with analysis of sources of power in society. So that in certain cases there existed what he called a charismatic authority as opposed to legal authority or traditional authority. And so much like the archaic Greek talent, power is not all things to do political process, but to perceive a real unique attributes of a leader who goes on to take the reins through exceptional means. The way such a headman exhorts his authority is rarely through the trust and code of former institution. Rather, they make use of a loyalty that they aspire to follow, whether because of love or because of fear. The strictly personal conception of fealty between master and subordinate is why regimes like these are known as personalist dictatorships. Such phenomena in the universe are found all across the globe, although due to their straight birth, these forms of governments rarely last for long. Yeah, it usually lasts until like the leader dies or steps down or something. Personalist dictators are nearly always elliptic in their rule, convoluted with scarcely consistent ideology encompassing a strong call leader. In its synergy lies its best qualities, however. They were highly adaptable and pragmatic regimes, able to rise to challenge internal and external challenges during the blink of an eye. Pretty nice, actually. It was always doubts that the men who take power in such ways are settled of vices and also luxury, because as Lord Acton wrote, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and earthly pleasures provide excellent distraction from efficient statesmanship. Unless they can curb that shit over there. In what case, personal dictatorship sounds pretty fucking good. But the person in charge isn't fucking stupid and knows what the fuck they're doing. Yeah, it must be fucking actually, what that? Fuck, there was this one South Korean reader. Fuck, I can't remember his name. Spartakism? Must be a bit of that one. There was also that guy in Singapore when it became free. His name slips me off well, but he was pretty comment with that though. Like, they did pretty damn good jobs at being pragmatic and all this stuff with their rule and actually trying to make their country a nice place. Aside, being dictators and all that, but it is what it is. Anyway, revolutionary nationalism. Oh boy, this is the fucking thing. I think a lot of people some of the people I know definitely would believe in this. Due to the blood-laden revanches, disappointments of the Great War bred radical positioning responses. Some, like the German model of socialism or the crystallization of the Polish and Fuming regimes into accelerationism, sent shockwaves to the ideological sphere, but not every reaction will make it the end of the decade of the whole to convert and imitators. For acceleration with an official label, other Theocratic nationalist movements rose and fell in its release, most dramatically in Italy. Situated between the rejuvenationists and reactionaries without a core to unite them, these groups fought collectively under the name of revolutionary nationalism. Despite the failures of the Italian example, that being Mussolini's failed march on Rome in this timeline, the attempt to bring romantic nationalists, anti-parliamentarians, and distant socialists, even futurists, into one camp has been instructive. The whole attention the year before the Great War, followed by the 5-year disaster that seemed to satisfy nobody, led to a number of dramatic predictions to the liberal parliamentary status quo. In Red Germany, Eastern social counters proved this prediction, including Black Crowes, nationalist sentiments led by men who were ready to overthrow the Kaiser to reinvigorate Germany. But what tends to constitute revolutionary nationalism? In some aspects, groups are defined by what they are not, and illiberal vanguardism that is not disdainful modernity as the reactionaries, nor as anti-traditional as the colonial accelerationists. Projecting parliamentary politics is too corrupt to answer to the public and too divided to clear vision. There is an authoritarian government by design capable of taking defensive action to reshape the country. Though the economic orthodoxy vary, they favor state intervention and coordination in the economy for the national interests of stability, such as corporatism. It may be seen though what fate these political outsiders will be. The fear may become a cause celebre at the revolutionary far right. The men who are left behind are still waiting to turn to shake the world. Indeed, so yeah, CME's like I know Bandera is gonna be revving that. So let's give you an example of that. Then some others, I think there's a few, but I don't really know who fit into the label. I know the only one I know for sure is Bandera. It's gonna be revving that. There's stuff over there, like a lot. You can apply this label to a lot of things. There's a lot of as the revolutionary, but they're also nationalists as well. So, and with Theocracy, you know, I really get too bit of that, but anyway. Set aside all questions of electoral merit and count gossip and ask, who can rule wiser and fairer than the men of the divine? Who can know justice better than those who dedicate themselves to the study of the sacred? For Theocracy, there's no answer, as there is no divide between spiritual and temporal power. But the onslaught of modernity, a few places in the world still are home to stay traditionally ruled by representatives of local religion. Be the power of a hierarch of the clergy, a scheming leader, or of heretical sect, or a charismatic prophet. All three requests draw their power from the mandate of faith, that state being the realization of divine will on earth. Despite the usual association they take in many shapes, generally conservative and far from co-religious religionists who preach for a greater leveling of society. Theocrats still do not necessarily see progress as evil in itself. Fearing the petty concern, dynastic maintenance, financial accreditation, and class theory, a number of religious priorities resemble a call for social reform. Further, not cloistered monks, sages, and other holy men who ensure the pattern and laws throughout the ages of strife. This form of government is doctrinaire, certainly, but not necessarily regressive. It may have been spread far and wide through adaptation. Yes, because after all, science and knowledge are part of as God works. It's better to understand the God after all. Well, I guess that's how God works as well. After all, God did not want us to know about this. Why would He let us achieve it? It may say that the storm of modern world, God's died. God's dead. This means didn't. We've killed him. Little wonders have mundane explanation that theocracy should be banished into the history books. Yet this bond between men can transcend the gulf of class, nation, politics, and no creed has ever been without doubters. The art, spirituality of great designs and great truths will continue to humble the product. After all, you know, say that faith alone can move mountains. So we can question that faith can help bring about progress and change as well. Because no stagnation will lead to your death, people. Gotta get some progress in there, otherwise you're gonna get fucked over when someone who doesn't let fucking tradition outrule progress and pragmatism come over and do some bad shit over there. But yeah, very much to despotism, also the stuff we got going on over here. Now I'm gonna get into Oligarchy. Before we do that, I'm gonna take a break over here with my thought for a bit, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Oh yeah, I'm back over here. So by the way, I just realized GD the description of everything is different over there. Been a bit since I've read that teaser for JD, but very much though it's a lot more in depth, a lot more explained over here in this. Alright, but those are kind of Oligarchy, Anocracy, public against kingdom, reactionary against revolution, liberal against authoritarian is tempting to signify the ideology struggles of an age in two clear defined camps. In the great war with numerous national movements that flourish, it is still possible to try and demarcate the line between free and unfree when discussing governments. Yet some still defy easy category. The forces unleashed by that war and the instability that followed would occasionally produce states that, while not adhering to a totalizing ideological program with needed representative nor simply pedestrian military leadership, is these regimes hybrids of autocratic and democratic systems that are classified as anocracies. Naturally, a wide range of governments would fit under this umbrella. Arguing the point the Second French Empire would qualify with legitimacy was thrown back by occasional referenda, and with the state and economy liberalized under pressure from different interests. At times, an anocracy may be constitutional representative in ward, but indeed a single party is dominant through control of state institutions and patronage networks, basically like a one-party state, or the legal opposition only exists in a narrow acceptable range. Others, the regime is authoritarian by definition, but has democratic features to direct the political consciousness of the population, such as the electoral party election and public votes of some matter. The hybrid regime may not be the original intended design of government, but a state of affairs that evolve into over time due to internal and external pressures. It's kind of like an authoritarian democracy in a sense. Anocracy. There is little idealistic or doctrinal about the concept of anocracy. There is no Aristocratic international purporting to unite the similar autocracies and dominant party democracies of the world. When managed capably, however, the system can deliver stable, decisive governments like any other. The quality of leadership will determine whether it will be a regime of revolution or of stagnation, and that's the big issue. Corruption, boy, it's a fucking plague on this fucking anything, really. Colonial government. Even something is so apparently self-evident as colonialization has evolved with time, some features seem eternal. Justification of seeking land, markets, and resources or extending the breadth of one's faith and empire, and so on. But the claimed lands expand, the technology and administrative expertise have grown with them. The system of government has become more sophisticated as a result. The means of control always bears significant investigating when examining a colonial government. Colonial is not an integral part of its patron state, and this may be an eventual goal of the colonial product and direct some it could be encouraged for that very reason, like in Libya with Italy. But the same government system technically does not apply in the ocean way. Instead, the government of the day tends to answer the imperial capital, even submitting laws and government salutes for approval. However, the settlement dwindled over centuries and greater spread of population territory reclaimed for economic and strategic reasons. Administration has become more complex to ensure stable rules of resource extraction. On one hand, even colonies that were not given the say in affairs of the home country were increasingly given powers of local government, centrally appointed an advisory body of notables who could they bring local concerns to administration policies. Under the pre-existing authority, king, chiefs, and so on were increasingly integral to the colonial system, being given some autonomy in the system so long as they leverage their station and connections to bring taxes and recruit back to the capital. As long as you pay your tithe, everything's alright. Colonial government is more than the line point on the map for a country to tap. The relationship, both political and commercial, that makes it possible to administer these lands without a tide of settlers and expensive garrison are decisively complex. Overall, there's been a trend toward greater self-governance for colonies, especially with the cost of Great War and socio-political tensions produced. Where the remaining colonies of the world are headed for a dramatic breaking point like the late British Raj, with the continued rethink of the imperial relationship, is anyone's guess. Yeah, I do want decolonization still gonna happen though. Pretty sure it might still happen, but it can happen later. Over there, because Britain would wanna, if Britain's goes on into the Britain lost though, and the fucking little empire basically dead. France still has some little commissariats and protectorates and all that stuff though in Judy, but it's not this stretch flood over here, so it's rough. Then when it probably colonialism will probably still last long. We'll see. Anyways, national democracy. When early ideas have said the competition between nations is a zero-sum game of their life, the real war is proof enough to forget the essential truth, to ignore the ongoing struggle has risked everything. The dissolute liberalism has been the midwife of national confusion and political gridlock typifies this. However, the concept represents democracy, the people having a voice in the government rather than out of touch aristocrats not inherently flawed. Since the democracies of Athens and Rome once intimately tied the franchise of patriotic duty and military service. Short of the liberal tappings, weaknesses, a purified, strengthening executive concept emerged, that of national democracy. Butterfied tendency under a vague notion of illiberal republicanism. Arguably the first theocracy to coin the term was Polish nationalist Roman Libertarian. While his credentials were marred by a combination with the Russian Empire, his Indica organization advocated the concept of democratic yet anti-pluralist and centralized Poland. The short-lived far-right government and post-war France, while chiefly associated with monarchism, also the Republican way equally voracious in announcing the factions of the Third Republic. That's in the Red Flood War that was actually on one site under Charles Muller, who were overthrown when they tried to bring back the House of Alliance. While some of their areas would abandon democracy entirely, others saw that the unity of people and nation could be expressed through the political party democratic process. Sometimes with the leader, the embodiment of the demos. In practice, national democracy favors stronger governmental powers. If the leader of the party embodies the people, they should be able to discard certain limitations that liberal constitution place on the majority and will. Thus, empower the regimes capable of marginalizing the deemed threats of national unity, political and cultural. While sometimes places do have the ideologies naming competition with one another, the label refers to governments that still maintain democratic structures within the party and without. However, opposition might be discouraged, free of structural wide liberalism. They would counter. This ideology allows us to have the only kind of representative government that will not fall into the page of history. So pretty much of democracy for we against the liberalism of today. It's basically it's like it's anti-liberal democracy. Anyways, oligarchy. The oldest form of organization in human history, oligarchy is remarkably simply conceptual. The band negator certain men tied among themselves to blood, that wealth, and mission. This principle of government of the few over the many has been a constant throughout every era, with its reformers and clarification when need be. This apparent vulgarity hides the riches and variety, form, function, and all the intrinsic developments this form has undergone until reaching our current generation. It was said by Greek philosophy, the golden means of regime is the equidistant point between monarchy and democracy, and thus its virtue was the ability both effectively rule state and its inherent constraint in the application of the laws. In time, the great power of local potentates potentates confederated in order to defend their democracy to ensure the continuation of the rule of law in the absence of legislators, as they having agreed to serve with the juntas of the Peninsular War in Spain. These cases were thus a natural regional response to the needed governments. Even today, oligarchy has strong connotation with local elites. These systems may resemble in the modern world faction of wealthy business groups of quasi-feudal oligarchies, strong plutocracies, or perhaps authoritarian but decentralized regime among others. Oligarchical regimes, whether openly elitist, or made of unspoken cliques, both intricate worlds are ever evoking needs, alliances, grievances, and other interests among every involved party. And oligarchy is a complex machine with uncountable moving parts, and therein lies the weakness and its strength. The great statesman make use of them for his own needs by keeping its precious balance or destroying it for great purposes. But these hidden interests are very likely to federate against any encroachment of the power, which provides a fair warning against excesses and rulership. Basically, Russia. Current Russia. Oh boy. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, but all this basically describes Russia. It's sad. It's so sad to see the state of things in Russia. I feel bad. I feel bad for them. Sorry, Russians. If there's any Russian watching, I feel bad for you. Moving on from that, plutocracy. The crown investment of monarchy were never the only markers of status. The medieval merchant republics in Europe, the post-revolutionary liberal republics, and even the old Roman Republic. Those are the kinds of men who, rather than by noble wealth, owed their structure to their fortune, to the influence they provide. Great vampire squid wrapped around the face of humanity, the tissue of the bourgeoisie, and so on. Criticism of this modern aristocracy's influence on party have dogged them whenever they are gone. With oligarchical systems of power are hardly unique, the hereditary rulers may find themselves encompassing wealth through their inherent holdings. Plutocracy is control over the government by elite pure selected by their wealth, and it's fucking dumb. But what makes the mere flawed democracy or authoritarian regime to a plutocratic one is where there is a council of men directly appointed due to their wealth, selecting a first among equal the ranks to dictate the government affair with an eye of profit, which is not going to work for a long one. Rather than a subversion for the pre-existing system that plutocracy grows, made by leveraging the influences of the class who are becoming elected officials themselves to represent the interests, alternative like the Dutch East India Company, which had diplomatic, judicial, and parliamentary powers of its own, a board of investors may outright pull the string of the government, perhaps due to the collapse of the state. Plutocracy has been used as a pejorative label in the vast majority of cases, from the left to right, or even the population at large. Being this as a priority is a system living only with the direct users of the class. Legal may number 2 benefits accrued on top of the detriment of the bottom, or pillage international investment over domestic ones. However, at the most charitable, the financial elite have a vested interest in maintaining the stability of the investment, but they don't enter into synchronicity with those of the country. In this circumstance, a mercenary eye for valuable material gain can become a valuable asset. Mercenaries are cool, but fucking inheriting, being appointed because of your wealth is cringe. Actual cringe. Nothing spells down for like appointing people who cannot fucking do the job that you want them to. Anyway, Praetorian oligarchy. Military has been, with all its faults and glories, one of the cornerstones of human civilization and the key political players throughout history. It has served as a real fortune for regimes and the entire nation. Even today is an indispensable tool for all states worthy of the name. Our truth of this reality is that on occasion, this proximity of power only creates an insatiable craving for it. Without a necessity or ambition, the army with a state, being a fucking Stratocracies. Was it fucking, I can't remember his name. Anyway. Our time both the possibility and danger and maybe determined political goal to pursue through the force of arms, which necessitates the creation of militant organization. Before long, the movement discovers itself uniform and marching to the beat of war drums. The always follow strict discipline and chain of command. The leaders greet now with a stern salute, and the mental transform into a soldier's creed. It must be a self-fulfilling goal, perhaps incapable of feeling a responsibility toward the state, which is placed by military authority. In other words, the last line of defense for the nation simply fulfills the purpose. It could just be that the states placing their trust in the military, given the territory for a variety of reasons. It could be temporary or indefinite. But the homage owed to these men is not suitable. Do not confuse these moments with the dashing charisma of Cardillos and other despots. This is not a one man's job. What you are witnessing is a submission of the whole political system not to a generalissimo, but to the army as an institution. A guild with their own rules, their own society within society, their own symbols and stories. Whether do juntas or they're a single dictator, this is the fulfillment of national prerogative of the warrior to lord over the clerks and merchants by virtue of their caste. I wonder if by Praetorian they're gonna fucking stab whoever's gonna be on charge because they did the thing. Who knows? Maybe that will happen. We'll see. But very much so like a military-led government in both civilian and in other forms of life. Other ways of life, sorry. It's provisional government. On occasion, the old wolf dies and a new wolf is born. Independence is achieved by political or armed struggle. A government is overthrown by its people. The need for constitutional reform becomes so dire that the system willingly takes itself apart to rebuild. Renegotiating the terms of the agreement with itself will form a political sides, however, it was accomplished. The rough beast of the future sloughs forward power to be born, and the abstract questions of the future give way to the practical realities of what now. In its intense till period, what administrators new states often a provisional government. This is not judging more of a compromise. This term describes a temporary system that maintains the day-to-day function of society with the first structures of government are drawn up. The reality of politics is that movement for grand change rarely has a unified vision for what life after this change should look like. Revolution is not so, especially on the final details of administration. Some machinery must be put into place to manage debate and keep public order in the interim. Others generally involve appointed and collective leadership. After the transitionary period ends, powers exceed the government to foster the creation of, often with an inaugural election. The condition of provisional governments are mainly uncertain. However, democratic, the eventual plan of the government is a means of safeguarding it, often leaves little room for public input. Stability of the process is paramount, but is also designated to dismantle when the time passed. In its strong hands to watch over the proceedings assigned of approaching dictatorship, we loosen the grip too early, risk the collapse of the government's careful negotiation. For a time, in this liminal state, everything is possible, but one should be aware. In politics, there is nothing more permanent than a temporary solution. Oh, that's so fucking true. That is the truest thing I've ever heard. Especially in a term government, but oh my god, that's the truest statement I've ever fucking heard about this. Let me fucking quote that. And with that, take a quick rest over here in a minute. I'm back. I've got me a bit of snack as well. So yeah, the next few over here shouldn't take too long over there. They're not as excited about the one, of course, so it makes sense over here. The more radical it is, the more of them there are, and the more weird shit that is coming. But yeah, onto the conservative. Liberal conservatives, to be specific. Political labels are a moving target. The term liberal, conservative, left and right, revolutionary, reactionary have their specific changes from their heyday to absolute monarchy and the oaths of French tenants courts. But it stands for, oh yeah, French tenants court also, I forgot about that. Therefore, in the middle of the 20th century, it must be assumed by what status quo they exist to refer to. This is exceptionally important when describing an ideology bearing the name of two shifting ideals: liberal conservatism. Philosophers and Enlightenment never embodied a unified tendency. There were a number who, while hesitantly before certain liberal or Republican ambitions, were still broadly in favor of the right of private capitalism and the concept of individual rights. Burke in England and de Tocqueville in France representatives of the trend that could be characterized as reformist. He called it the events such as the French Revolution they decried, when the questions of feudalism were no longer as pertinent, what their heirs were cautioning against or partially adopting change as well. To new reformers and radicals. Liberal conservatism at the present political movement has come to accommodate the Enlightenment project. The free market, representative government, and the likes have settled questions. But the crossroads believes in individual rights and traditional values. Some have framed their approach to the principle of individual responsibility. While public morality is something worth upholding, wealth redistribution and social engineering are looked upon with a more jaundiced eye. Skeptical and collectivist radicalism could upend the whole system, or overbearing government intervention. It has continued to function as a sobering second thought of liberal democracy. When the Airman book stood in opposition to the bloodshed unleashed by the French Revolution, his sides prepared to meet a similar storm. Indeed, with the Red Flood, if you will. Interesting stuff over there. National conservatism. In the past, the vanguard of the nation was more likely identified with liberalism, extolling the rights of the century over arbitrarily drawn feudal polities. Writing in 1848 stood under slabs of vestigial duchies and cracking empires, placing a revolutionary core that was often more bourgeois and urban against loyalists who were often more faithful to the church and throne. But the passage of time changed the political question of the day. With the rise of mass politics, the face of status quo of mainstream conservatism would shift along with them. Did the national interest factor into the modern acquisition of global capital? With the rise of socialism, was only racing the way in a red tide? For all we know, it demands a national conservatism. Priority and tendency put simply is the preservation of national identity and interest by what democratic means are available. While the interest will vary from place to place, it tends to manifest the same recognizable hallmark tradition, be it the family, cultural practice, or identity, or people. So basically, more like, traditional conservatives, more like our timeline conservatives. Well, some more rightist conservatives, what I've seen. Of course, conservatism is nothing if not adaptable, and the pressures upon the nation made to make a greater toolkit than was thought appropriate. But some conservatives emphasize the protection of the traditional social order. The natural conservative strain is more willing to see an active and creative role for the state of higher-minded goals. From simple corporate regulation, industrial subsidy, to outright corporatism for the sake of a national strength and stability. Just like in liberal cultures, national conservatism will evolve in collective response to when I say corporatism, it's not like, it's corpus, as in the body, like the whole society and organ thing. Not that's corporatocracy, but like corporations rule. People get the two confused all the time. Now should evolve a collective response to the threats of our age is asserting that in the face of global crisis, one that ignores the lines on maps, strong hands require to shelter one's home and people. Even so, the raised coercion, weapons, and anger would inherently risk the same status quo it seeks to preserve, and so the ideologies remain separate from the more authoritarian response to the following war. So it's more like a isolationist, self-reflecting kind of thing. It's right-wing populism. I remember this one because Tino's version was basically you should read Tino's version of right-wing populism. Talks about it references one man in particular. Anyway, I can get into that one over here. Because I don't play Tino really much anymore. I kind of given up on Tino. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I pretty much now into Tino. Before there are other things to watch, like Red Flynn GD, for example. Anyways, popular revolts are solely a leftist or right phenomenon, nor is it always a call to bring about a new order. The historical record is full of attempts to undo a change that was underway, from war revolts and the king to militant outcry against new methods of production that disrupted all livelihoods. It will be a mistake, however, to go all the right agitators of some atavists, retrograde obscurantists. Sometimes they come to be that political movement becomes wrapped around a charismatic figure and the grievances they voice. And the voice may speak in familiar language and with values, national pride, strong leadership of being committed Democrats. Research carried in disguise. Sort of like the guys intend to shaking up the higher bound political establishment can be identified as a form of right-wing populism. Like its leftier counterpart, this tendency at times begins to move with external to political structures before it becomes a party or a faction or resistant one. Similarly, siding outside the established political theory can lead to political platforms that are less idiosyncratic. Like other conservatism, is either an obscure regime of high tax and restrictions or seek to wield a regulatory state through own domestic industries. The final right wing tends to be a great emphasis on traditional order, and if the common man generally hopes that tomorrow will not be too similar for the day, it is crypto-socialist from a party elite or economic elitism for the capital really representing the people. When populism can prove surprisingly effective, despite all the obstacles against outsiders, a sense of authenticity and occasionally shared priorities, charismatic vulnerabilities and electoral lines available to the movement. Likewise, being unafraid of upstaying political boundaries act of the past can allow leaders to reshape the nation more quickly than expected. By reclaiming the title of tribune, conservatism no longer needs to be seen in reset quo, but return the power to people's hands. Yeah. A lot more nuance over here. Pretty much like charismatic figures going for our traditional platform and all that stuff. No, some populism. Of course. Balance social conservatism. There's always the underlying trend that processes were aware of the world we know it. Mass literacy brought the ideas alignment to the masses. The primary primacy of the king and church was questioned, even oceans away. New era of capitalism undid the old guild of the united professions. Industrialization and urbanization broke up both professions and family relations. Erosion too is a process, one that the major foundation that show up before everything is called away to sea. Even before the advent of liberal governments, there were philosophers concerned with the effect of unmooring society from what society is bedrock for ages, at least not without careful consideration. Not everyone agrees to clear validation. If there is an underlying future social conservatism between states and cultures, it's the desire to uphold and secure traditional social structures. The aforementioned forms of labor, family, and culture, what separates the ideology from a more conservative reactionary movement is that it's willing to work within the structure of liberal democratic principles. Yeah, so, what is a bit reactionary, they want to work within democracy. Inside these boundaries, faithful secularism and the collective well-being of the individual can be promoted and supported by a state that wields the law to promote public morality. A conservative government economic program can differ between parties, however. Some will propose increasing spending subsidy protectionism to reduce the wealth disrupting the families and local industries, while others favor clear austerity to discourage indulgent deviance where they can. And it's not full-blown autarky, it's fine. Despite the disagreements on how to get there, the company embraces how things once were, holds ample appeal around the world, but would need not destroy the alignment heritage of individual rights. The government, the social conservative promise is of community grounded in the things that would own to bring the people together. While the promises of modernity have run up against the consequences and the disaffection as seduced by the bloody-minded radicalism, it may be time to seize what we still have and carry it close to our hearts. So basically, it's we like how the old way of doing it works, but we want to make concessions and move with the democratic framework. Basically, if I'm reading that correctly. I can recommend somebody's in the comments below. You should do that. If I misinterpret some of these things, let me know. Because I want to not be stupid about some of these. But now on to the libs. The West is fallen. That whole shtick. Anyway. Classical libs. Difficult to overstate how much of the philosophical and political ties of 16 to 1700s Europe influenced the modern understanding of politics. Do not say that the power of the king, throne, and priest altar, as well as the traditional social relations of feudalism and guilds, have their involuntarily, explicitly, and politically questioned by treaties of the nature of mankind and government. Though contact with the rest of the world aided by the printing press and increased global public literacy, much of the global political thought from the most basic ideas of liberalism and conservatism has existed in the shadow of the European Age of Enlightenment. It is now only centuries of development later that the delineation can be made around classical liberalism. At the root of the Enlightenment, liberal thought was a number of principles. Thinkers like Locke and Descartes were spun on natural human rights, the individual rather than collective, that a person could become aware of exercise. While the extent of the political changes they desired varied, their hope was to have a government representative of its people, whether a monarchy limited by constitutionalism or a republic. Mercantilist state-controlled paradigm of commercial trade was also challenged by the new tide of bourgeois intellectuals who saw virtue and potential in carrying individuals being able to make their fortune themselves. But the aforementioned principles were a common heritage of liberalism as a whole. Classical liberalism had been a recognizable tendency in opposition to others that were differentiated over time, chiefly over how to respond to economic questions raised under the New Order. In some respects, this school of thought, called the avant-garde liberalism, showing in human the principle of individual freedom, while others see a place to be expanded upon the world state. It must be remembered, however, that in many countries, liberalism entered the scene through dramatic upheaval. In parts of the world where the feudal order remained, the old liberal creed still holds revolutionary premise for those who dare know it. Pretty much like, all liberal stuff here. Lip cap. Karl Marx wrote that the bourgeoisie had played a revolutionary role in casting out feudalism, and yet immediately the question became how to survive what replaced it. When the individual supplanted the collective, how would they endure their newfound freedom? This was the Enlightenment. The discontent lies not in retreating from the gaze of liberalism, nor does it hinge on defending what has been achieved. No. There's in recognizing that the work is not yet done. Capitalism is not a necessary evil or the least bad of evil option, but a positive, productive ideal, the most perfect and just means of humanity to thrive. While the unprepared may balk at the conclusion, others choose something more bold, the path of libertarian capitalism. Because true capitalism has never been tried. The intellectual background of this tendency is most obviously the evolution of liberalism. It was like the ability of the individual to act rationally on their interests, and he was the quasi-fundamentalist reading of universal human rights, especially property rights. Some, however, especially look to the anarchist explanations of hierarchy and the inherent violence of state power. While the results can vary considerably, the ultimate goal of a liberal government that governs the least, sometimes characterized as a night watchman chiefly concerned with the national defense and law enforcement, ultimately hold that while free expression is a core value, certain principles should not be about political debate, lest the masses vote themselves into new shackles. In contrast to the quoting statist trend of the world, libertarian capitalism presents something heroic, untamed. They cry on one hand as the final degradation of the liberal state, and on the other as a pure exploitative expression, and none of that's gained some credibility in conventional liberal party since the end of the Great War, whereas some interests of the war that fight to get the other way. Entirely adherents believe in the promise limitless potential awaits for the daring, those who will reshape the world in his foundation. Both rights do times have to stop man from seizing it. Indeed. Lose you want because you are a person. basically it. It was nationalism. Nationalibs. While the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars would spread the Enlightenment conception of liberalism across the world, it also carried the idea of the nation within. As though the Republic had consciously emphasized the French people as a whole rather than their dividing ruling houses. In the aftermath of their tumult, when the old order sought to restart itself, both ideas had their aspirations frustrated. In some cases, it would become a united cause against the king and the empire to top them. Additionally, though the latter half of the 1800s, some liberal movements had already had a voice to the government grew more conservative national interests. What was already be called national liberalism. The ideology sees a tangled contradiction at first glance. Where national independence had come late, preoccupation with a united populace and the state, strong enough to preserve its independence, led to compromises on the distinct liberal upholding of individual rights and the free economic activity. Protectionism and state subsidies to support local industry was no longer taboo. To protect powerful government was a necessary trade-off for national mobilization or maintaining control of populace with major divisions of identity. As to became a dominant strain of liberalism in places that were long serving to empires, but also in the Austro-Hungarian and German empires that were seeking to clamp down on regionalism in the first place. In ocean way, the progressive movement in the United States also includes liberal reforms to pursue a more aggressive foreign policy and aggressively tries to assume regional and immigration lanes into a unified American nationalism. America. Fuck yeah. But what would be the legacy of this national liberalism? To illustrate the limits of the Enlightenment foundation it claims, it is a muscular rejoinder of the age of big stick diplomacy and industrial warfare, a liberalism that marches along the very vigorous national state. Where the truth, the pragmatism and ideology makes it an effective collaborator with other parties center. Let the opposition maintain their lofty principles. They will be able to thanks to our work. Yeah, so basically like liberalism, but for us. A lot more conservative in its approach, but still liberalism in its ideas of individual and all that stuff. Sucklib. Just a monarchy would become variegated into different stripes of absolutism and constitutions. The liberal type would inevitably split the current of own. Once the Pythagorean, with the Pythagorean caps were put back in the closet, the question of what freedom and rights meant ceased to be purely theoretical. Outside the saloons that hosted philosophers and revolutionaries, there was a wider society that was great liberal experiment was acting on, and the material concerns remained pressing. In response, a new tendency could be differentiated that came from what's called socialism by the end of the 19th century. The differences within the liberal school developed early on. Adam Smith, the doyen of free market economists, characterized property as a social rather than individual institution. Parliamentarian and philosopher James Mill would also develop Enlightenment liberalism along the lines of effective governments and expanded its franchise. And his son John Stuart Mill, only when further examining the desired limits of liberty and authority. Perhaps somewhat, the state has an affirmative duty to sustain the conditions where every citizen can learn and use their rights. It was under these theories that liberal parties of the world began to construct the first welfare states. Yes, welfare, capitalism, all that. With immediate material needs better addressed and with the tools to develop oneself within reach, the individual thus empowered to utilize what's guaranteed by their natural rights. Socialism is still a creature of the Enlightenment. Whatever social reforms it might raise, it, however, might intervene to smooth the relations of labor and capital. It still does not concede the state of the ultimate merge of society. The individual still holds their fate in their hands, but the government coordinates the societal good and security that better cultivate the limit of rules. By the past century of challenges to the liberal hegemony, there is still hope yet that it is not merely status quo overdue for destruction, but a conscious ongoing choice. We shall see, won't we? We shall see if the people will adhere to this stuff over here. Also, we're at an hour long. Goddamn. That makes sense over here. It's for long. Oh, just for a while over here, and we still got some more over here. I'm gonna read through this over here, then I'm gonna take up another break over here. I do apologize for these breaks over here. So, gotta make sure the store is ready for what's to come. Left-wing populism. Plenty of men on the campaign trail would tell you that they are for the people. Sometimes even when not from a microphone it would be true. Yet the hope of many reformers have been dashed by politics as usual, as compromise and corruption narrowly sully hands and shallow ambition. As great as the common man grow in the system interested in maintenance alone proves unable to respond to them, someone in their movement may step into political arena to harness the public will. Where their programs and rhetoric bear a resemblance to socialism or progressivism, it can be categorized as a form of left-wing populism. Populism as a label is unfathomably vague, but in this context some traits are common. The populist movement Can begin outside of a conventional political party, started as a protest to protect the other public campaign before forming the party of its own or become the total faction of existing one. When they describe as left-wing, it tends to be because of an economically redistributed agenda or an advocacy for egalitarian social reforms, often stood behind a charismatic leader of specific grievances. They tend to produce a less doctrinal, even Socratic political program than ones that are normally be categorized as socialist. Yeah. It's like vaguely socialist. Left-wing populist movements, for all they might swim upstream against entrenched political interests, have a number of innate advantages. An energetic, authentic leader can have a broader audience that sells candidates, being able to make appeals across party lines, and typically apathetic. Kind of JFK, actually. It was a bit. Furthermore, a personality with a lack of scruples or investment in the status quo can be as forceful as they wish against their political obstacles. They are predictable, and remains to be seen whether the contradiction of the populist movement will be its undoing, whether it be called up by establishment to criticize or whether it proves democracy still has the capacity to renew itself. Like to think that it could renew itself, but see time and time again that it doesn't. Anyway. Liberal socialism. A deep divide loomed between the heirs of 1789 and those of 1918. The signs of the liberal individualistic tradition and the collectivist socialist. Yet the victorious German social democrats worked within the parliamentary system until it became impossible for them. Edward Bernstein, the head of the SPD's right, would even define socialism as a form of organized liberalism. The task of reconciliation between the two sides' ambitions may fall into the theoretician of liberal socialism. Foundation of the tendency generally began with English reformers, though not entirely. John Stuart Mill, certainly the leading light of British liberalism in the 19th century, wrote on the idea of democracy as the principle of social organization. He also held that such economic redistribution and workers-owned cooperatives would be required to organize. Realizes. Later on, the Fabians would expound on more economy, coming into social justice that cuts out the exploited rentier class. Platons extolling the workers' self-management and Stonebart's writing on mixed economies would also sow the seeds of the European continent. In many ways, political concerns saw the ideology expand further, as those who joined the German and Hungarian revolutions adopted to the realities. In the case of the liberals, chafed under the mobilization and state terror required to secure gains. In the case of some of the socialists, thus will realize the present state of liberal socialism. In practice, the general states in order to decentralize power, principle of egalitarian volunteerism, and makes public part of the economy. So, yeah, I said liberal socialism, liberal democracy with socialism characteristics. Was the key to the leaders of revolutionary middle class or to achieve the ambitions of freedom that the bourgeoisie frustrated every turn? This remains a dissonant current in some parts of the world despite political polarization in the name of justice, liberty, and socialism. I'm so sorry for the microphone moving loud and all that stuff over here. I'm trying to get a better spot for this. Now I'll read you after progress of democracy. We're going to talk about all the democracies first, before we get into the other stuff. As the machinery industry grows at the turn of the century and reshaped its life around itself, issues of social reform began pointing out for decades became impossible to ignore for most of the general populace. Unsanitary living conditions, the spread of disease, labor abuses, and the militancy they engendered, all of this demanded action, even by those who were reluctant to upend the whole society in bloody revolution. With the growth of governmental administrative capabilities and a new tool of statistical measurement and scientific study, the question was asked, can we not apply these improving the state of our people? The resulting tendency has been identified as progressive democracy. Even when simply identified as progressivism, the ideology represents a root belief in the cause of bettering man's society. As the empiricism of enlightenment discovered the causes of disease, as debates upheld the values of education and inalienable rights, abolitionists emerged as a universal ideal to strive for. Opposed to barbarism, obstacles of progress towards the idea were identified in the issue, such as poverty, poor public health, and literacy. As awareness of them grew, would-be reformers took their causes to the world of mass politics. Personal democracy therefore tends to uphold the value of progress and the needs of a democratic state to pursue it. However, progress itself is contested definition, much like liberalism and conservatism do. Of course, all sorts of things about that. Anyway. It has historically evolved over time to meet the issues of the day. On one hand, the values of public health has led to the application of germ theory to urban sanitation, and on others, the application of hereditary to a eugenics program. Values of education and secularism have justified public schools on the colonial civilizing mission, but overall, has the political phenomenon that holds of the state, when forced to these great societal ills, can and should ameliorate them through national effort. So yeah, progressive democracy and making life better for people in and out. Circumstances. Anyway, Oh, jeez. By the way, we talk about the two interesting ones out of all this progressive stuff. Progressive corporatism. The lightning unleashed by the French Revolution in 1789 proved alarmingly difficult to put back in a bottle. Though it was far from the linear universal progress process around the world, and though many would try to reverse it, thrown and altered lost much of their temporal authority age to follow. Obvious critiques on the new liberal state of affairs came from traditionalists, but they were not the only ones. By the middle of the 19th century, a new alternative has emerged to progressive corporatism. The concept of a corporate organization and mankind is an ancient one. Even Plato and Aristotle could envision a model where people were sorted into bodies according to their own society. The great guilds of feudal Europe that organized themselves by profession are an example of this practice, but they will never remain an idea for the traditionalists alone. As the industrialization and class tension intensifies and the breakdown of traditional social relations like the family and guild to lead to alienation, sociologists and philosophers will begin to advocate for new organizations to rebuild solidarity between people. It's the world Saint Simon and Luke said Catholic social teaching. Pope Leo, I don't know, but commissioned studies of corporatism, and in 1891 published the something called Rerum Novarum. I cannot remember my role number, so I'm skipping over that. Which stressed the need for the economy based on justice and dignity, blessed the trade unions, and they emphatically called for collaboration between corporate and labor, capital and labor. Really, a successor to the throne of St. Peter was of the same mind. The Vatican's search for a course became capitalism and socialism, without protecting the Enlightenment itself, inspired many. With the anchoring of the distribution of guild socialism, progressive corporatism is still navigated between the enemy of liberalism, dehumanization of militant modern politics, and reactionary activism. The state, having granted right to collective organization and class as a whole, pushes them to collaborate for a broader societal betterment and harmony in a world driven with conflict. There is still time for devotion to one another. Marsh is going to be seething after this because of the whole fucking thing. I'm not going to talk about that over there. You can go look at that whole thing for yourself over there. I'm here to read ideology stuff over there. And besides my thoughts, I get tired enough as I hate from reading all this. Lastly, over here, social nationalism. The road Marxist approach views the nation as a bourgeois construction, opposed to worker solidarity transcending the borders. Others may see the dangers inherent in harnessing nationalism, where demagogues ready to fight against attacks and attack our enemies, both foreign and domestic. Yet, despite these caveats, there are places where left-wing politics represent democracy and nationalism work in tandem, where progressivism and nationalism are deliberately united in a political movement, especially as countries have achieved national independence since the Great War. The tendency has been formally described as social nationalism. It cannot be forgotten that the ideals of the nation were once directly opposed to tradition and reaction. Republican nationalism tore down the vestiges of feudalism in much of Europe, from the privileged position of clergy to the differences of modern nobility of the right of fatherland. Furthermore, while the revolution in 1789-1848 primarily considered liberal in character, a number of participants were recognizably from political left, from the conspiracies of equals of the founder of communism itself. In countries where the mass political mobilization is made more difficult by the aftermath of an independent struggle, a still trans-feudal power system or a pure domination by another nationality and national identity is still powerful to build collectively across the country. Lest we forget the aftermath of the Italian unification. We are immediately, now we must be Italians, indeed. Social nationalism is by definition a progressive ideology with all the entails for improvement of the people's material and social condition. It differs from its contemporaries in its preoccupation with occurring a national inculcating a national identity to the population. The condition give rise to it, newly won independence or feudal backwardness, tend to lead to its growth outside of established power, especially in their imperial position. With the goal of balance of power shifting political consciousness growing in a global periphery, the pagan caps of Europe may once again be done by men once more. Indeed. Social nationalism. Pretty based. Pretty interesting stuff over here. We're doing a very dynamic ideology. It definitely is a lot more stuff over here. Like, you know, these two over there definitely making this more like what we think of it as progressivism. But now I got these boys over here, and I'm gonna take another pause over here. We're gonna break over here. So now we're getting up into socialism. We've got a few more. Though, and then we get into the big three, that being, well, big three up here, that being Vanguard, Socialism, Anarchism, and Excel. So let's get this up in a bit. Let's take a quick break. Alright. Let's get straight into this shit. Agrarian socialism. The Industrial Revolution in Europe was so transformative from how it altered structures as grand as the reflections of production to how it changed familiar structures under wage labor and organization. That would be bizarre if it did not similarly impact political philosophy and discourse. Was mass industrialization and aberration, or the next popularization? The Marxist current of socialism, with the interpretation of and responded to the structure of the New World, would kind of be predominant in Europe and spread across the world. But it did not entirely replace its forebears, especially when the Industrial Revolution was slow to start to arrive. The peasant and reformers had more time to develop a concept of mass socialism and adopt it to their local coalitions. Agrarian socialism. While many socialist movements have looked toward the example of Berlin, others have derived different conclusions from the problems of the day. The final striving towards communism, from industrial socialism to the creation of an urban party to organize the workers of the revolution, may have seemed outright alien in parts of the globe where the bulk of the population are still farmers. So I adjusted the Spartakism model to raise the peasantry as a revolutionary class and have a plan to alternate route to Marx's goal. But others remain focused on the practical reality of the situation. A former farmer here technically owns the means of production, but is he bourgeoisie? Does he hoard a surplus value? We'll see. The agrarian social tendency thus trend towards return to ameliorated rural conditions. It still aims for social control of the land and means of production, but primarily focused on the most old and storied means of all, that which feeds. Like the social revolutionaries in Europe, who remain a parliamentary party despite their consideration of Marxism, tend to be willing to work within the existing political spectrum rather than chase the future revolution. However, these currents may not even be united with a political party, but have demands of a political program to present the government. Let it not be said that those who live in have been treated as a traditional state of utopia, or the mass unthinking lords are content to have no voice of their own. People are like farmers. Some socialism for the farmers, but it was them suck. Nowadays, it's easy to forget that for all the end goal was and for all General Rudolph did to force them to arm, the Democratic Party was a mainstream political party in the German Empire. It was not a clique of militaries meeting fervently in basements drawing up lists of people to purge, but a public organization that campaigned for a concession for the bourgeoisie state and the support of the public it claimed to represent. If there was no turning point about their legalization, what would the SPD in the 1930s have looked like? Perhaps in practice a little bit of bastion of democratic socialism. The tendency is far from novel. In Britain, where the proletariat had been spiritedly advanced, the Chartists of the 19th century saw public demonstrations of support to reform to move the levers of power in Parliament. This, rather than insurrection, was the method of the day. Political franchise expanded in democratic countries. It became more responsible to take a democratic approach to what was once thought to be a revolutionary struggle. Socialism came to present a common man, after all, should be able to earn their support in a fair election. Democratic socialism is thus approached the proletarian struggle mediated through decisions to represent government in the host countries, realizing that illicit violent struggles tend to forge an authoritarian political movement. It chooses to work within democracy to reform it, gain control of state institutions and the economy via the ballot box. The other gradualist and corruptible in some quarters, the publicly sunny face of the movements can broaden their appeal to the general population, and ideally discourage their suppression by the state. Equally important, a democratic socialist party can be removed peacefully should it lose the confidence of its base. How more bourgeois politics can corrupt the authoritarian entrenchment that has occurred in some countries backed by bayonets and absent. The whole system will still be rocked voluntarily with the support of people. Unless something fucked up happens. Because that's usually the state things. They've got esoteric socialism. Many secular belief systems have been the rise of would-be religion. In a time worn by rhetoric that looked at the practice of ideology and movement described in such a way, an equally dogmatic as most hand-bound sect, the jab is all the more amusing when it lands of our materialist or aesthetic worldview, and associated outright communists know well. However, as the search of meaning in the modern world produced all manners of cult and scholarly groups, it was never without somewhat synthesized socialism with a niche spiritual vision. When someone wanted to divide itself with political power, the resulting form of government has been termed esoteric socialism. What the fuck? Sexual socialism. Christ. Whether because one stream of socialism thought is primarily non-material or simply goes hand in hand with spiritual and millennial vision, the result is something altogether unlike a conventional socialist movement. Rather than a vanguard parliament of the party, esoteric socialism model may rely on a religious or secret society as main chart of political power. Yes. The cost of land, if you will. While the structure of this organization is often undemocratic and hierarchical, the ritual by which a member is initially can't serve to ensure the solidarity with the group and commit to the political purpose. However, fallible man is in the quest for equality, giving his work a spiritual dimension constricted as well, whether to care for his birds and arms or for the uninitiated masses. After all, Jesus was a carpenter. Largely theoretical as what entered in the 1930s, it remains to be seen what tendencies it predominates. Being an offshoot of Marxism and forwards or more spiritual overview that came to similar conclusion, whether a perversion of socialism or meaning granting greater meaning, esoteric socialism defies easy categorization. Yet so too does a world racked by pain, spasm, and modernity. As the people demand liberation from the trivial and least, the messenger argues, let's liberate the soul as well. That makes sense. The funny one over here. Nationalist socialism. Yes. Let's read it along before we fucking talk about it. A lasting solidarity is hard to find, especially in conflict with other solidarities. While frequently decries the anti-patriotic force, not all who wave the red flag have forgotten the one of their country and see their interest in enlightenment. Is it an insufficiently developed consciousness, or would the latter one's homeland be a march a step from the other one's working class? For the Socialist Party that choose the latter, they define the ideology of nationalist socialism. This phenomenon is the culmination of a few trends in the early 20th century. Gradually, in less developed countries, another manifestation of nation-building project. In this case, the adherence to state-directed economic policies, the development for fostering political growth, and national solidarity among the working masses. In Europe, the epic of the Great War would also make many socialists choose their fatherlands over international brotherhood. Some of you would be covered to view the directed war economy and sense the collective community as similar to the goals. Even before the number of times saw the expansion of the empire in Africa and entry to the Great War as a revolutionary task against the wealthy empires of the world was Italy not complete comparatively a proletariat nation? Yes. Oh yes, the empire is revolutionary. Nationalist socialism is, as a doctrine, is far from concrete. Some adherents were drawn to accelerationism or to a more authoritarian form of socialism. The idea is sometimes defined by what was left behind. The movement is still generally parliamentarian socialists, but have stopped well short of embracing the old Marxist line that the worker has no homeland. This tends to place them in opposition with poise avowedly of second national. Additionally, whether for practical developmentalist reasons or out of sense of solidarity, these socialists tend to be much more accommodation to patriotic bourgeoisie who can contribute to the socialist task with their industry wealth. Decry revealing tests and spirits, nonetheless reminded that the Social Democrats and Burns do not speak for all proletariat sensibilities. Yes. So it's basically revolution. Revolution for we, a little bit of revolution for thee as well. With democracy in there, of course. I got religious socialism, esoteric. Before sociologists and socialists put an end to it, solidarity did exist. Communities and charity at their place of the community of the faithful and the good work. The revolutionary part of the 1800s in Europe and the Americas will often take an anti-clerical fringe, or outright irreligiosity. But within the socialist movement, there were still many who were at least comfortable with organized religion, even if their politics were not avowedly religious. Not for nothing is it a joke that the labor fucking debate politics owed more to the tenets of Methodism than Marx. Evidently, someone would cut the Gordian knot in appealing to the downtrodden who were supposedly not yet put down the OP of the masses, but ultimately religious socialism. Certainly, it's not the only movement trying to navigate home in the individualism and enlightenment paradigms, but the significance of the workers' movement is obvious. Many who would be otherwise susceptible to socialist appeals were immediately turned away by the specter of God-killing radicals. Regardless of its veracity, where promises of land reform minus the rights to win of the country, suspicion may be allayed by articulating just how much of the old traditions have been common with the socialism. For all as separate hierarchies of the church could still require the trends of the heterodox, difficult to forget Pope Bonaventure's tense decision to recognize the German revolutionaries. Could religious and college solidarity be necessary synthesis to replace a shitty old order? Maybe. Naturally, the interpretation of religious socialism vary by school, as does the extent of the faith influence of our policy of the movement. Some have their home to political parties, others the church, depends on organization, whether influencing the rhetoric of Christ, Buddhism, anti-materialism, the Muslim notion of Zakut, or any other religious tenet that resembles socialism. The common factor is that the conception of social and economic system is rooted in the faith. Base is more enduring than the manifesto. So esoteric is more like, the spiritual concept of it. Whereas religious is just like, like the old charities and all that stuff. Very much no difference over here. Now we got utopian socialism, or socialism before Marx, really. In a world ravaged by war, there are still a few daring to dream of a better future. A socialism that is untainted by the violent citizens of Marxism and accelerationists. A true brotherhood of mankind as joyous communion of all earth. For despite what historians and Leninism may preach, and contrary to what the theorists in the journey would tell you, the idea of utopian socialism is not yet dead. It is just waking up. What's referred to as utopian socialism in the fact comprises of many doctrines from the detailed pleasantries of church for year to the roaring industrialism of Henry de Saint-Simon, and many more. Yet despite these adversity, all of them are united in a single vision, the perfection of humanity itself. Utopians generally have a positive view of human nature, rarely advocating for violent revolution, instead believing that the power of delusion will overcome justice of capitalism, or stressing the importance of strong moral principles necessary to build a new world. The detractors of utopianism like to call this sentiment naive. You know not possible. It's about a steel trial modernity. Yet the high idea is still garner followers. This is a new spring for humanity, free from petty greed and living in perfect harmony with each other, never cease to captivate readers, drawing the flickering hope of overcoming the crisis of modernity. As storm clouds gather across the globe, some people not that stuff. Is utopian socialism really destined for the dustbin of history? Although its dreams cease to be mere phantasm one day, as mankind would gracefully into a new age of prosperity and splendor. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. We just see. That one too. So I'm gonna read these two first, and then I'll read these two first for reasons. Socialism, Spartakism, populist socialism actually. Karl Marx, with his model of historical materialism, theorized the evolutionary process of feudal and capital models of production towards capitalism. While he cautioned against using it for the iron law of history, which is a successful Marxist revolution occurred in the country at the peak of its capital development, obstinately vindicating him, like in our timeline. So what then do we say to the parts of the world groaning under the less sophisticated capitalists of feudal mode of production where they seek liberation? Sorry, the existing socialist movements in their urban centers, however much Marx and Engels they read, is not going to wait for ideal conditions to emerge. Because their folk socialism it's not an explicit tendency within the internationalist socialist movement, but instead describes attempts to adapt the second international line to place not just industrialization of the Western Europe, but as still pursuit of socialist republics. The lack of industrial proletarian, the domination of rural producers, especially in agriculturalists, defies repeated the path of German social democrats. The orthodox Marxist approach practiced in Europe of creating a working class party with the ties of intimacy to the workers' urban workers' movements, more suggest to agreements to entrench itself in a landscape that does not remotely resemble Germany of 1918. For this reason, the umbrella movements under folk socialism tend to occupy countries outside of Western Europe on the capitalist core of North America. While maintaining a connection to the official social orthodoxy, they have adopted themselves to local identities attack consent, also international. Though the ultimate objective is to create a social system, the road to take many twists and turns. In place of capitalism not yet fully destabilized the pre-capitalist mode of production, these soldiers seek to leap into the future via the peasant class, instead of skipping the bloodshed exploitation of the capital period entirely. Yeah, it's be like, we want that socialism, but we haven't achieved the necessary things to get socialism. So we're just gonna try to do it and see what happens. Now Spartakism, Germany's whole thing. Spartakism is referred to internationally as the orthodox ideology of German Socialist Latin Republic. Following the overthrow of the German Empire has been upheld as the model of libertarian revolutionaries around the world, and there is a charge against the opposition in the very same place. And yet, despite how widespread the terminology has become and how influential the German Social Democrats have been in the evolution of world socialism since 1918, it can sometimes be difficult to separate the historical circumstances of the German revolution from what Spartakism refers to now. The roots of the idea are chiefly in the orthodox Marxist tendency which have already dominated the Second International prior to the Great War. Its core tenets aim to establish Marxism as a total scientific system for understanding the world. These systems of different classes being opposed with economic circumstances influence the culture and politics of society, inevitable revolution resulting from destabilization of capitalism. The political party and organized workers' movements would be cultivated in preparation for the coming crisis, fighting for economic political reform in the meantime. When the German revolutionaries had origin in parliamentary party, Spartakism as its name comes from an unofficial grouping of father Social Democratic Party members in exile, known as the Spartakist League. The faction became the most prominent of the party wings during the revolution, leading to the state of the aftermath. Today, despite the many compromises made to establish the system in the native Germany, Spartakism refers to the same second international socialist tendency. It sprouted from parliamentarianism, but engaging in constant class struggle for which the time comes to overthrow capitalism and establish a socialist republic. Although it has been pressured from the right by anti-revolutionary reformers, from the left by the hardline revolutionaries, and orthodoxy by the new accelerationist cap, it remains hard to stand the better international socialism. Yeah, so this is basically socialism. It's basically this timeline, socialism, like flag bearer of it, that all the other tends to follow. With the comment on that. So the fact that it's getting attacked by left, right, and center, baby. And now for the sins. Rev sins, to be specific. Because that sin's the longest one. Though the first socialist state was largely led by into reality by Parliamentary Party, it was not given that it would be the first model revolutionary action to succeed. In the decades immediately before the Great War, chiefly in the Latin countries in Europe, the tendency of revolutionary syndicalism would shake the foundation of the bourgeois states. In greater and greater number, the units themselves were organizing to agitate for rights and concession, even utilizing the nationwide bodies independent of political parties. The question was raised. From there, could governments of a country pass into the hands of the unit themselves? The way that political syndicalism lies somewhere in the orbit of anarchism. Russian anarchist Mikhail Bakunin laid out a plan to retreat from electoralism, from the mobilization and work organization, take power and strike action. Further by American industrial unionism, the wave of militant union organizing would clash back against the European shores before the end of the 1800s, flooding into a rapidly shifting industrial landscape. In critics of the entities when the main part of military socialists were seen as timid reformers, men on the front lines of the labor struggle spurned party politics and theoretical argument to their actions. Atop the work philosophers such as George Sell began to outline higher-minded theories of anti-parliamentary socialism or of class warfare and advised as creative, liberatory actions, I guess. So, well, I'm gonna fucking use political violence as a form of use violence as a form of political action. Anyways. Today, whatever the marching orders emanating from Berlin, the syndicalist current remains alive and well, and it cannot be forgotten that the union-breaking ranks of the government had launched a general strike was forced threats out of the Great War. Both the principles and the power represents, as other leftists would entreat themselves in compromise of the initial hopes, starting with the class struggle separated from bourgeois parliamentary corruption, continue to inspire, outside of traditional conflict socialism. With the old machinery of states and the parties coming up against shortcomings, both new and old, the workers themselves waited wings to begin the battle they have done best with suited for, without halfway war or cowardly pity. So basically, them syndicates are gonna rise up and bring about a true revolution. So it's about the counterpart, the Nazis then. While the term syndical is sometimes used interchangeably with the more leftist school, we ignore the other tendency that got on to doing back. Nationalism, like assembling originating in France before the Great War, then went on to have an outsized influence on the other Latin American culture of Europe. Frustrated by political limits, the leading socialist parties and union syndicates in French were beginning to self-organize in a non-parliamentary organization capable of striking and agitating for their own goals. In fact, there was reason that the governance of the state could one day fall into the hands of unions themselves should they unleash a stupid large general strike. However, in syndicalism in native France, then the other on the left and right who opposed the Third Republic were regained the cross-penetrating ideas within one another. George Sorel, perhaps the chief theoretician of syndicalism, was a narrative of revolutionary violence against perceived corruption in the liberal state, and this brought him close to the monarchist Action Français Charles Marat, done initiative alliance of the two currents. United largely by opposition to democracy were exemplified by the episodes like Marat's appreciation of especially undemocratic socialism alongside Sorel's belief of Sorel's brief embrace of integral nationalism. I think that happened actually. I can't remember if this actually did happen, but I think it did. They were not alone. Indeed, the two similar connections were being made between the syndicalist leaders who embraced patriotism and nationalist anti-liberals such as the AIN, the Action Nationale Italia. I think that's what it was. I think it was like Mussolini's thing before his failed march over here, and then became the Lisa Nationale. I'm trying to remember if that was that, but fuck. It's been a while since I've done Italy, so I apologize. Anyway, in practice, at least national syndicalism has come to occupy a middle ground between more leftist syndicalists and some of the syncretic against the liberalist camp. When our anti-Marxist syndicalists have been siphoned off by the few made example, it is of the core fighters who believe in class struggle just as they believe in revolutionary nationalism. Motivated more by the naked materialism and Latte theory, they seek the new order of proletariat vitality, undoing the emphasis of the liberal bourgeois consciousness and restoring meaning in life to work. Entirely, our national syndicalist views on specific of government and economic can be electric, and surviving pure union-based models looking friendly corporatism to the United Nations. So, yeah. Left and right, baby. That's not in itself. And now, vanguardism. With Leninism, basically all communism as we know it. The Leninist school of communism introduced to the world throughout the Hungarian Revolution stands on the left flank of the international socialist movement. Formulated first by the parliamentarians formerly lead the RSDRP, the ideology favors a harsh doctrinal interpretation of Marxism, a fundamentalist leaning that decries others as compromised revisionists. The core principle of that vanguardism. The revolution brought about by a group of disciplined professional revolutionaries who are meant to form the first guard of the proletariat army in the front battle with the bourgeois forces. To understand Leninism, one has to understand its history. Lenin was not a prophet in his own country, outplayed by Alexander Bogdanov and his reputed faction. First of the attempt to take dictatorial control of the RSDRP. Force we spelled for much right, because Bogdanov had some clout, and Stalin favored Bogdanov, actually, in our timeline over here, than Lenin. He actually didn't like Lenin over here, but then Bogdanov died of malaria, and so Lenin took over. Yet in the West, the ideas found a fertile ground plowed by the Great War. The fight orator gained followers in Germany and Hungary, always being there where the most radical socialists gathered. And Revolution was worked during the Agrarian Revolution. He was appointed foreign minister of the new German government. It was a continuous criticism of not only other international sources, but also the German ruling party itself. It gave him a global audience. Apostles of the revolutionary who saw the SPD as turned away from global communism, it was rough shit by the cabinet in the 1920s. Later, the corpus of theory and flocked to it. To follow it, sorry. The waves truly very that's driven the social democratic parties the world over, and then become an international vanguard zone. Castigating those on his right, renegating those of the liberty infantile, blind to strict materialist ethics on the ironclad party, state magic colony, and policy and national self-determination. It is to create a doctrine of loyalty to the science of Marxism, or willing to let the gold communism be besmirched by the petite bourgeois falsities. With the stagnation of the World Revolution in 1920, many disillusioned workers may soon hear the call, deciding to take history into their own hands. My boy Radical, here we go. National vanguardism. More so what, also kind of like, one kind of sort of an asshole, but not really. Nazi even, who knows. It's a bit flip-floppy between the penal services. Anyways, from the first articulation, communism held that the workers had no country. For them, Marx and Engels appreciated the revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries for destroying the feudal system. The nation that was the bourgeois created with an obstacle of international working class cooperation. Those ideas influenced the broad spectrum of the politics. Not every adherent abandoned nationalism completely. Some, like Vladimir Lenin, argue communism need to be liberty of small nations. Others consider their people as entirely proletarian when compared to those more powerful empire. That by the Great War proved the ultimate test of solidarity for the European working class, and for the most part failed. The revolution in 1918 was also not solely led by revolutionary social democrats in Germany. It would elevate all manner of dissident voices against the Kaiser who did not follow the orthodox social democratic line, even some who saw a wartime sense of international community replaced the false promises of international brotherhood. While there remained a marginal or fractured tendency in the aftermath of the war, considering 1922's failed proletarian national push in Italy, Mussolini, the nationalist movement within socialist states had time to rebound. You find the theory and agitate within new bounds. By claim adherence to sneaking the doctrine of national vanguardism, but it's notable enough to be given the name of observers, just like they once did accelerationism. Decades after the German Revolution, it remains uncertain whether the Spartakism models will overthrow the world of international capitalism, and the counter-revolutionary regimes gathered straight, undoing a sort of breed of communist decries. That the revolution needs to survive, it must use all its means to disposal of the rally of the proletariat. For the militant vanguard party to lead the workers to the national idea to bind them together, will this be a victory for socialism, or will it be the gravedigger of its souls? Well, we shall see though with Raven now and his pagan stuff. I got stuck republicanism. The word republic derives from the Latin phrase res publica, meaning public affair, yet for so many so-called republicans, the state they construct not truly of the people, but simply a license for license. A freedom to be left alone. Well, farce. How can a citizen be free when their neighbor, the state, their nation, and their world is enslaved? This is the downfall of the civil republic, which is in reality nothing more than a machination of capital and false liberty. Social republicanism emerged as a disintegration of the civil republic, as well as the cosmopolitan stain left behind in socialism as a whole. To find the origin of the revolutionary left in 1848, those brave communards and patriots who pushed back against the liberal wings of the revolution across the world. They often maligned heroes were those who stood valiantly against the state of war, attempting to settle the republic truly made and ruled by the peoples of the nation, not the people ruling the nations. Not the nation ruling the people, sorry. Opposed to the simple application of universalist principles, social republicanism emphasizes the need to look at the tradition and liberty among a national body, following the thread of justice throughout the fabric of time. A social republic is not a state nor opposed to Plato, but the organization of an entire national demos of rulers themselves. Because of its ties to particular histories and nations, its manifestations are numerous as the countries. Yet, all common principles such as the commitment to democracy have focused on national romanticism and the need of a vanguard of by and for the people, the guide to the public. Nevertheless, in all cases, it weaves a story of liberation and anti-domination throughout the ages, one in which the living are no more privileged than the dead, one in which the flames of the ancestors brought forward, leaving the ashes of the past behind. So kind of like Jacobism. Goebbels fucking thing. Oh, hit the wrong button. Goebbels this whole thing. You got state socialism. Struggle does not simply end the revolution victorious. For regimes recognize practicing more socialism, they know that to relax the control of the parties is a crucial junction which jeopardizes everything. The economic background is the bourgeois deviationism or worse, cannot the growing administration state. Having become more sophisticated be used for good for its content. In a sense, though Marx and Engels would decry him as disconnected from the proletariat, these states forms of socialism have resemblance with the theory of Louis Auguste Blanquille. His model of change involved the revolutionary organization taking power, then forming a international dictatorship to construct the conditions of socialism. While Blanquism became a pejorative in his lifetime, there was a certain pragmatism to the concept, and so, whether a reflection of the militant group that carried out the revolution or due to a lack of mass socialist party in the area it controls, they have formed a socialist government that revolves around a centralized authoritarian state that wields its bureaucratic capabilities to build the world of communism. State socialism exists as a catch-all term for socialist governments that are of the vanguard's persuasion, without being directly connected to the regular organized global tendencies of the Leninism and Pietism. There is the vanguard party that controls the government, and the government controls the economy towards the ultimate goals of communism. Though historically the cries entrenching a new hierarchy, the ability of state bureaucracy to make real material improvements and modernization can give it legitimate popular appeal. And shows the state socialism model treats a revolution like a cure, and like many cure, it must be administered even if patients object. As the proletariat rise up from the mud and is dedicated to the task ahead, and when the machinery of the means of production gleams at night, the people can walk around and head themselves. So basically, we're gonna get you that communism. We gotta fucking build it. And all that good shit over here. Anyway, Aristocratic socialism. Ooh, this one. The Socialist Revolutionary and the state's militia are traditional enemies. The purging of the Paris Commune defeated the left in the Russian Civil War, and the myriad socialists aligned with revolts seeped down by colonial garrisons have left their scars. However, under certain conditions, the avowed socialists find themselves in charge of the army and the state at the same time, often due to the collapse of civilian government authority, whether political power is passed in the army or the warlord has ambitions of governing the Socialist Republic. The regime emerges characterized as aristocratic socialism. To some extent, the Great War provided a theoretical pretext for this political arrangement, even though the concept of total war is being explored and glorified by Prussian general staffers, so the complete militarization of society. Similar ideas were discussed in the Civil Wars in the late 1910s. According to socialist officers in Russia, elsewhere such as the revolution in Mexico, some generals would struggle on the battlefield while implementing land and social reform in the territory they control. Somewhere between social banditry and military junta, the evaluated military commanders had ultimate authority over the area and governed accordingly. Under a particular form of socialism, the vanguard party is subordinate to the military, or the military itself serves the same purpose. At times, military build-up and warfare prioritized and outside military focus on resources. At times, the army is effective, is forceful. A forceful means of clearing the ground of the Socialist Party via putting immediate force to say gain, say deniance. Many of the invented traditions described to a conventional military ship apply here, but it's open to fears that the Red Army or People's Militia or whatever government state becomes an end of itself rather than means. A Red Prussia going by a privileged in-group of officers. Still, they would counter, with some justification, that the revolution must go to war to survive. There is nobody better suited to the task. I mean, over here, if you can be fighting a revolution, you gotta make sure that it stays alive. After all. And oh boy, we got the anarchists, and then we got all this over here. After the anarchist stuff, I'll take a pure break again. Cause oh boy, we're gonna get some interesting stuff over here with the anarchist stuff over here, but also excels. Individual anarchism. Since time immemorial, men have felt the yoke of domination around his neck. Feudal barons, absolute monarchs, and modern proletarians have all had their turn placed in the grim irons around the bodies and souls of the subjects, restricting them to such mere existences that they can no longer even dream to be free of their shackles. Even among so-called revolutionaries, the invisible slide back towards slavery or the behest of the state is a concession that far too many make. What good is revolution if the base of human society, the individual are still staggered up? To make the change requires a commitment found none led the abstract ideas such as party, nation, or for man's most intimately known thing, himself. Most clearly associated with the works of Marx and Max Stirner. Stirner. Fucking spook. Anyway, the heads of philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, individual anarchism, and find most patent expression, none that tried plan first of the union nor the honey were the parties, but in the action of heroic individuals, and each determined to push back the encroaching miasma of the state. As such, while many other ideologies have essential issues and political doctrines that they are not right behind, the core principle of the individualist can be embodied in manifold ways. While not fully rejecting traditional social organization, the power of the masses does not escape them, for better and for worse. They are simply a means to an end and a tool to wield destruction of the state. And then, as the revolutionary gains hegemony, it must be destroyed in turn. Each of these successful blades that choke the individual must be discarded with the utmost militancy. For the followers of Stirner, the legalists like Jules Bernal, and the market anarchists of the Boston School, each person fight their own path to liberty, birthed from their own soul, and they seek with great vigor to achieve it by any means necessary. We shall become individuals. Let's see, we got mystical anarchism. Many agitators proclaim that revolution and social progress must go deeper than the political sphere in order to effect lasting change. Some delve into the culture and social minutiae, arguing over the best policy dynamics of Promethean souls, however, plunge into the domain of the soul. Mystical anarchism preaches that the spiritual revolution is just as critical, if not more so, than the social one. It is a vehicle by which the collective soul of mankind can be truly emancipated, by tearing down the antiquated structure of the past and liberating the masses from heated servitude and institutions, the idea that corral the human spirit, and ultimate liberation is possible. One might describe it as orthodox mystical anarchism is formed by a synthesis of mainstream anarchist theory, while its practice and mystic philosophy are produced by symbolist groups, including such figures as Dmitry Merezhkovsky and Georgy Chulkov in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Others claim far earlier sources of inspiration, such as the medieval writings, the Margarita, and even ancient Gnostic works. It even spread further afield, coalescing similar conclusions across the globe, constantly with something greater. Mystical anarchists can be broadly identified apart by their anarchist cousin by several factors. The first of which is spiritual broad-mindedness. Uncompromising moral values are quite often of a vaguely Christian character, though some of the authors were in favor of more occult or oriental pursuits. Secondly, a faculty of mystical perception, the ability to recognize spiritual aspects in one's environment and in metaphorical texts. Finally, an unfound urge toward the ultimate principle of the universe. Indeed, it being said that fundamentally the emancipation society is but a means of an end, the new man must be liberated internally as well. So, unleashed from bondage to the world as it appears. Some mystical anarchists connect this worldview with the Christian apocalypse, while others are more esoteric persuasion, some blend of the two. Individual liberty is itself to be suppressed in favor of a supra-individualism, a transcendental oneness of all men shared and divine. A mystical transformation, self-realization is true its sense. The way forward is clear. The ocean must be twofold, or is nothing. Sorry about that. Reading is taking over. Definitely gonna be the longest video I've ever done. We still got a whole other thing over here. We're not gonna be taking a break. It's just gonna be on the longer side. National anarchism. I'll hold off for a bit. Anarchism has really made a pleasant bedfellow of nationalism, much like the socialist cousin. The historical anarchist perspective is that nationalism is an obstacle to the brotherhood of men, the accelerant of militarism, and perhaps goes hand in hand with the formation of monarchy itself. For the majority of the cause, this is uncontroversial. Curiosities, the future anarchist luminary Mikhail Bakunin spent the revolution in 1840 years in ideology who would not be entirely out of line with the League of Fiume, advocating for a mass cooperative uprising of nationalist movements to destroy the great empires of Europe. Yet, like it did so for many other schools, the Great War did not upset the old balance, mirroring some socialist parties supporting the war efforts of the homeland. A number of these perma-anarchists such as Peter Kropotkin and John Grave previously favored the on-top victory over central power with the sort of obstacle to revolution, one of our former UD ideologies demonstrated how anarchist principles could interact with national interests. More vivid was the futurist Dorian Marinetti's inspired alliance with Italian anarchists, while he advocated based on shared desire to survive over politics and morality. Positive with opportunism and provocation, but was entirely contradictory. Nationalism, the cover of railway movement group under it, can be described as glibly as anarchism stripped of its humanist perceptions, anti-state, patriotic, even ultra-nationalist. A number of these organizations have gained increased cachet by harnessing stringent right-wing cliques of post-war order. For some, the government as they know it is an obstacle for the least and heroic and nationalist ideas they stand for. It must be decentralized to more autonomous views. Others see the destruction of the country altogether and disintegration into harmonious communists, reflecting more primordial identities. One thing for certain, when the center falls, the people tend to be free to do what is right and necessary. So basically, we like the anarchism, but we like the either destroy the state to allow the heroics and that stuff, or group things in the group like people in the various communes. So it's kind of similar to that. It's not. I mean, I have described national anarchism being a far right thing over there, but basically what I'm saying over here, it seems like it could be right winged, but not far right. Whichever it is. Anyway, social anarchism. The end goal of communism is a product outlined by many theories of society without classes, money, or state. In short, one might argue anarchism. As one might imagine, this has been a bone contention for the political left for the better part of a century. For the other years of trying to create an international social movement, the socialists and the anarchists found themselves at odds over the method of searching for the final utopia. What can be termed social anarchism today began with, if not past, egalitarian movements such as the Diggers, Mikhail Bakunin's collective anarchists, a group that stridently opposed Karl Marx's rule of communism and authoritarian during measures. The issue of the proletariat was the means of which a worse tyranny than desire would arise. Well, Stalin, so I guess get that right. He would not be the last to strike position for the libertarian left, where Bakunin advocated collectivized means of production. Anarcho-communism went further and advocated for all that produced to be held for the common use, all for the better of man to pursue its flourishing. Others would cross-pollinate with syndicalism, seeing the unions as the preferred unit of self-government. For some, officially joining a party or movement was missing the point of the cause, and the masses could be inspired but deliberate themselves through bold acts of revolutionary violence. With serving as a contest for the political left, ranging from the use of state power to be the romantic image of revolutionary, social anarchists remains a present of the broader political possibility. The ongoing crisis of modernity was produced mass movement and service dictatorship, also turned more and more people against the state market that have failed them. And of course, the aftermath of the Great War, seeing the state socialists, the lowest, the old debates far from themselves. If Marx himself grew skeptical of revolutionary centralism and power after the Paris Commune, he should have many more lessons to teach. Indeed, it will. That's intentions. Yes, it's anarcho-communism. It's social communism. Social anarchism. It is what it is. It's the good old fucking stuff here. The rest seat listens. Still such a low war anarchism concern, but then again, so is anarchy itself. The end goal of the anarchist party, after all, featured the abolition of the state or overall hierarchy and its replacement with some other voluntary order. Its old definition, however, is the pure absence of government, something described as a more conditional lapse of an inspirational political goal. Nonetheless, there are three non-state conditions that are collected under the label of revolutionary anarchism for lack of a better classification. The first represent conditions to collapse public order, while bureaucratic and increasingly centralized states have risen to dominate the bulk of the world. The fear still remains that all this can do swept away into the Hobbesian war of all against all. Due to the disaster of war, a territory now lacks a discernible political authority to describe what people can reach at an arm's length. Sitting far away from the capital cities and colonial outposts, there are polities that have never truly administered their conventional states. While authority may exist as the basis of strength, seniority, spiritual individual, the clan tribe of band tends to lack the same concrete borders of the conventional states. They may have even a migratory or nomadic people that shrug the lines on mats. Finally, saying this may result in the total realization of anarchist principles. In this case, presumably, society has returned to highly localized units without an overarching body to coordinate them. Where this is a libertary road forward or return to Rousseau's free state nature depends on who dream it is. See, it's got like three of them. Oh, here. You got collapse. And you got nomadic, in a sense. And the other is just like, what the anarchist's dream, as it were. But it all depends on who is the anarchist in that. finally, this Theocratic anarchism, one that I'm actually very interested in out of all the anarchist stuff with you. I mean, interested in a lot of the other ideologies over here, though. I might not said it over there. But several of these are very interesting. I mean, this one especially. The historical record to replace with visionaries seeking alternatives to unjust hierarchies and exploitation. They amass followers in the name of liberty and sometimes separate themselves from the white civilization and live autonomously according to their values. The historical records replete with the example of these visionaries being suppressed by the organization of the state, capable of leveraging military production and coordination as the force of multiplier against the masses. In the face of the inciting pressure against carried and conducting a revolution against an entrenched authority, a new form of organization occasionally emerges. That is Aristocratic anarchism. While there are arguably quasi-military organizations in the past that might serve as inspiration, such as a group practicing social banditry that conflicts in the Great War provide examples of how revolution may be conducted. Over in the Civil War, one of the Provisional revolutionary leaders was Nationalist, a Canadian anarchist. Before his desperate alliance with the Socialists, and before retreating to the Caucasus in the Society, he helmed an army of soldiers that alternatively protected and governed the network of communism in Ukraine. The morality of their means was debated for years to come, and yet, Plutocratic anarchism then is the answer to the question how the movement expects to protect itself and its gains. It is the revolutionary lane of libertarian struggle wielded to the vessel of military structure. The order of the day varies from location to location, where the army is a democratic body will have more resistance to populist occurs, but the results can prove surprisingly effective in the battlefield. Of course, it is nothing if not controversial among fair anarchists. Even if military disposition or victory, can it be trusted to relax after the guns fall silent? In a world where the forces arrayed against true freedom have grown more vicious, however, let no one say the anarchists have not risen to challenge. Reminds me of the Siberian Black Army in TNO. Where's the army? Siberian Black League can get crewed by the army. Comes Siberian Black Army. It's basically similar to that one over here, but this is one. But there was despotism over here, but this is also classified as anarchist. So I'm assuming there are a lot more genuine anarchism than the SBA is over here. And now on to the big boys over here, and I'm gonna take a break as I said before over here because there's gonna be a lot of reading in my throat. Needs to be prepared for this. So I'll see you in a bit. Just hopefully do the last break I do. Because we're at getting close to 2 hours, goddamn. Oh, this is gonna be a bitch to fucking figure out how to split it off there. I wanna try to do annotation and all that, but see you in a bit. Alrighty. We're back. The home stretch. Let's do this. Feumism. The old order, geriatric man who delighted in glad handling and favors, the politically corrupt and spiritual bankrupt. A nation simply cannot achieve its destiny, cannot strive towards its moral purpose, just foul fossils in control. To stir on a people from the muck of democracy requires those who have not only wished to experience the full and true life, but they had energies to seize it too. Gabriele Annunzio was once a man. And the song that the Viceroy Tiacano sadly sing had the profound reverberations. In spite of the claims of imminent national and international revolution being swiftly proven false, it ever remained a beacon of those who guiding light many around the world flock. Illuminated by the fuming torchlight, the ethos of the city-state and his followers coalesce around principles unconstrained by the traditional political sphere. Revolutionary nationalism, anti-imperial radical, single-party ruling coalition, and class collaborationist economies, period of general... Point of war. Course, but of equal, if not greater importance, with the mindset embodied by the enacted poet king. Renewal of a country's body politic cannot occur only in houses of government, but in the theaters, poetry clubs, and cafe houses too. To lead a people into a better future requires vibrant souls. It requires men who take a life by the throat, or romantic appreciation of the Leontian life, and the thirst for great adventures, and the courage required to pursue it. Simply those who wish to fly among the highest heights. Not every man off the street has the lane required for such traditions. Those that do, however, shall be the heralds of a coming new world, and it shall be beautiful. So basically, Fiume, specific adventurism. Stuff. I think Ireland actually has this ideology too, feminism. But it would be like, extreme adventure, theater, poetry, clubs, all that shit, spreading the ideology of the of the futurist cause all around the place of where you be. Pretty much in a nutshell. Also, the dogs are still barking. I do apologize about them. Futurism, your boys' stuff. Velocity, technology, War. In the smoldering tension in the 1900s, a furious engine began to war in Italy, and its war cry would be heard around the world. From the pen of Filippo Tomasino Marinetti in the 1909 manifesto, which grew into an artistic school, but also into a stable for totalizing political and philosophical ethos that sought to remodeling life from a larger dinner table in the battlefield. At the same time as the drew interest in Italy, Europe, and beyond, its application came to defy simple political classification. Other than anti-traditionalism, arguably the first of the modern ideologies to make up the core of accelerationism, the world is now only reckoning with the legacy of futurism. Many of these precepts were at the war of the past, viciously attacking bourgeois morality and traditions. They trumpeted militarism, youth, and innovation. For the automobile to the airplane, at the same time, there was in least sensibility as far as rhetoric, extorting superior men to heroism and convention-defying deeds, while frequently at odds with socialism. And while the 1920s were a wedge between the League of Human and the Second National, it became far more than a rightist tendency almost immediately. At first, it was introduced nationalist socialist. Then anarchists who also sought to upend public order in Russia. Futurism would even join arms with the communists, seeing as a society see a project to liberate and uplift the masses. This utopian drive was thrived way more, forever elevating the image of the heroic pilot, Ardito shock trooper, showing the legal state and fueling and carefully built in part by revolutionary futurists. Futurism immediate novelty is worn off, but the task before remains, and the whole world left to revolutionize. But how will the globe be reshaped? And to whom? Time and government has produced a wide range of economic models under the umbrella, from producers directed to capitalism and syndicalism to state-managed corporatism and communism, where the model carries riding into the states of total war or visionary utopia. Is either extreme truly opposed? Can futurism maintain its Disney momentum? Or in the end, will gravity always win? We shall see. For the future is now, old man. The future is now, and regardless of which side you're on, is going to be a bright thing indeed. National rejuvenation. The rise of national rejuvenation concept is a story of success in the Revolutionary War, of the end of newly won independence, but also a failure. In which the victors of the Civil War failed to inspire much international sympathy, staying on top of the lashes they won. In France, the Orleans Restoration founded on repeating the law of exile. In Italy, the burgeoning fascist coalition self-destructed, trying to ally with conservative interests. But most importantly, in the newly reborn Poland, the forces of traditional rights slid their hand working with the Tsars of pressure in exchange for autonomy. The new states in Europe watched and understood. Nationalism in the future would have to be explicitly modern as outlook or it would perish. It would be Warsaw that served the laboratory of ideology, free from German and Russian domination, but also inheriting a disunited populace to make it into Poles. Their approach to nation building would prove instructive to other nationalists adrift the world. The avant-garde nationalists of the League of Human would also prove instructive of the new tendency took shape, uniting dissident leftists and writers just as then until and Paris had done. Having called his own regional bloc the emboldened Seneca martial regime of the Marshal Pilsudski soon gained admirers and theocratians who ran further with the concept, promising a new sense of being pride in the post-war malaise. Collecting the label of accelerationism, the rejuvenation model is electric as it appears, nothing broadly applied. There are, of course, countries that defies it. The nation requires a strong hand to weaken it, and thus necessarily defies builds an authoritarian government. Said government exerts a strong influence on the economy. Above us, national rejuvenation seeks to inoculate a new national identity and mythos in the population, though all of its policies and mythos may all be recited together on the march ahead. So basically we're gonna bring the past to the future. That's not rash by itself. And it's all a little thing though. Very interesting stuff over there. Might be. I wonder if I should do a polling thing. I might do something with polling in the future maybe. If I float it, maybe I'll wait until like a big polling update comes. We shall see. I know you created some stuff over there. I might do something with that. Anyway, Neo-folkism. Oh yes, this one over here. This is the fucking yes, this one. Where there is a people, there is a folk, and where there is folk, there is the folkish. While the folkish movement to Germany existed in the liminal space between a romantic past and industrial present, there were those that embraced the scares of modernity, willing the gears of history to grind onward. Ancient myth and folk beliefs are brought to life and given a second baptism. As under the aegis of Neo-folkism, the carnage of the past is saddled with the runaway horses of the future. This new phase of folkism was born out of the crisis of modernity, and many countries either succumbed to siren song or cosmopolitanism or closed themselves off in reactionary shells. The Neo-folkists rejected these answers. They chose the impossible. They embraced the rupture of modernity, wielding it as a sword against the apathy of traditionalism and the egotistical march of internationalism. Seared in the ink of authors such as Jan Stanchuk and the Colonialist group of Mark Augier, so this is Augier's ideology, Neo-folkists took arms against those to their left and right, cutting a path forward to secure the existence of the people and the future of the children. Turning their eyes toward their own people, Neo-folkists tend to shine a new light upon old ideas, many of them throughout Christ, Jehovah, and other Messiah feed in favor of rejuvenation of the pantheist or pagan faith, inherited to their faith and wounded, inherited to the blood and wound in their soul. Blood and soul. Yet, whatever they wish to do away with all alien religion is simply molding into a vision of the people. All Neo-folkists embrace a vitalist view of faith, worshipping life itself and all that springs from it. A national vitalist, if you will. Neo-folkists tend to embrace the collective destiny of a people based on the aspects such as shared collective creative energy, leaning towards socialized means of economic management, yet without succumbing to the materialist worship of the international worker. It is due to some collective destiny that democracies often shrink down to the local level, if not trampled entirely. After all, the will of the people can manifest itself best without parliamentarians proving their part. There are thousands of peoples, and there are thousands of folks. Neo-folkists, drawing upon the local roots, differ wildly from nation to nation. Yet above all else, they are united in one truth. Former gods and heroes of the past are alive, yet still, as soon as they shall find themselves fighting to defend the homeland once again. So basically, it's bringing the past up to a modern. It's like making the past, but like you're bringing it up for the times, really. It's similar to that wedge, but it's a lot more paganistic. A lot more spiritual and more nationalist than that reg is. And I got socialism. The line between the living and the dead is thin. A shimmering silver thread existed between the reality and the next. In the Aboriginal culture of Australia, the land itself was birthed from the thread, and what they call the dreaming. It is from this very seam that dreamlike cracks between the world that surrealism was birthed from. Despite what he may wish to be the truth, surrealism did not spring from the minds of Andre Breton fully formed, a term coined by Guillaume Apollinaire, later Oscar-won fame. Surrealism was first described the music of Eric Satie, a reality beyond reality. From this, the eponymous artistic movement began to take shape, but the surrealist pontificate would be headed by Apollinaire, writer by the aforementioned Breton. His dual manifestos defined the form as can be known in the Twin Testaments of the Surreal. Yet it was only in 1927 that Surrealism would take the leap from the artistic to the political. At the expulsion of the Surrealists from the SNSFIO over participation with the auteur mayorship would lead to them creating their own vehicle, the Parti Surrealiste Français. Created the PSF would become dominated by its leader, and Surrealism began to take form as the bastard child birthed from the incestuous rutting between Utopian socialism of the 1920s and the avant-garde sensibilities of the 90s. While some of the left have simply denounced surrealism as Britanistic revisionism, propagated by Bismarckian fashion to fill the proletariat's head with lies, the movement itself branches far beyond those words far of an open maw of its founder. Power modernity to bring forth the primeval, the superiority of the unconscious over the conscious, the triumph of the metaphysical over the dialectical, rendering of reality, these are contributed by many, and executed in the plethora of divergent methods. The surrealist banquet has many blossoming flowers after all. In a world where the logic of 2 and 2 makes industrial slaughter, who can blame the men who dare to dream of something beyond the real? Indeed. We are beyond reals. We are socialists, we are surrealists. Beyond the ideals of your will. I cannot quite explain this, so we shall wait and see what's in store. When my Brother Memories comes out. Technocracy, that's my favorite one. One of my favorites. The futurist technologies out there as well. The pace of modern era accelerates with each year. New invention, new factories, new breakthroughs. Society drags behind like a bag of sand out. Hit my leg. What's about that? Society dragged behind like a bag of sand tied to the steel hold of industry. Governments are all still failed to understand and manage the modern world, still guided by archaic ideas. They fall into economic crisis and the anarchy. Order seems to wane with every revolution, every crash, and every one of the countless wars of the last decades. Yet there is a solution, a new order brought by these brightest minds of mankind, technocracy. These iron members are forming a technical, scientific form of government, a world not the voice of mob will count, but the plans of a capable, rational state, suited with the challenges of modernity. Corrupt politicians, deceiving demigods, greedy captains of industry, all to be done away with and replaced with the rule capable experts, knowledgeable scientists, talented engineers, and true visionaries based. And lead able to conquer the modern world and forward a bright future for all. Despite these lofty goals, the technocratic movement still is necessary. Though the idea of an unelected intellectual elite reaches far back as Plato, and while scientific form of government was described by Auguste Comte, first true technocrats first only appeared in the early 20th century. In America, economists and engineers discussed viable technical solutions for the kind of Maldives only touched by philosophers. In Russia, the cosmist movements weaved utopian regions of a society that completely mastered technology and science, for the weave of America itself in a perfect form. Where industry has triumphed, so has technocracy spread. It made successful application to European engineers, societies of British intellectuals, even found echoes of the Far East. As well into the New Age, technocrats are here to make sure this will be an age of order and progress, a true new dynamite shining ever so brightly again over the darkness of the past centuries. Technocracy, epistocratic technocracy, really. Still by experts, knowledgeable people, and those that are actually gonna make good progress and not become corrupt assholes. Pretty much it. And now, last but not least, pietism. In the eyes of the European observer, communism and acceleration are usually seen as eternal enemies, yet noted by many reactionaries and moderate critics, there is deep similarities between their doctrines. The bold impulse to completely reorder the world and bring forth a new mankind similarly is what lies at the roots of pietism, a movement that embraces both the socialist proletarian revolution and the avant-garde pride of new modernity. Pietism, forwardism, we'll call it pietism, owes its name to a split between the monarchical son of Democrats between the Vapid faction of Alexander Bana and the followers of Vladimir Lenin, over the question of revision of Marx and certain epistemological issues. But the former came to assert the dominance of the party, Lenin remained influential in the Second National, and the Vapidists had to pay a bitter price for their heresy. Bogdanov was officially denounced as the night covers of the International, pushing Vapidism even further to the margin of the communist movement. Yet, Lenin was not without critics. Many comics banded together in defense of Bogdanov, forming the distant Third National, a place for those too radical and unconventional for the doctrine of orthodox Marxism. While the Third National doesn't enforce a clear theoretical line, two ideas are usually defined for pietist movements. Primacy, the struggle of human against nature over social struggles, and the provincial ruleless culture. Together they create a radically Promethean vision of the revolution, not only an end of capitalist oppression, but also a transformative event of humanity itself. Unshackling the collective will from internal struggles, now united to fight together for a glorious future. A society, socialism for the 20th century cannot stop at the promise of comfortable life for everyone, but should remain more. The abolition of death itself, the idea of war can still matter. The collective realization of what was once thought to be mysterious sorcery. And above all, socialism has a duty to achieve the ultimate destiny of mankind, to claim the stars and spread life in the universe, to reach dominion over the whole cosmos. Are such dreams too bold for a harsh reality? Or the mainline communism mixed mired in ideas belonging to the 19th century? No matter how dark things may seem for the war-scarred humanity, the Purists continue to believe that a wondrous future awaits to be claimed brighter than anything one can achieve. So basically, they are radical ultra-modernists with some very radical and fascinating ideals. Definitely cool shit over here, and holy fuck, we are done. All sorts of stuff over here. I've spent over 2 hours talking about this. My throat's killing me, but I must continue on one longer because we got a little teaser appear at the end over there. Some other little things over here, and this is it. This, from what I've read over here, from what I may have gathered over here, this is the maybe an Ask a Drawn Forevermore. Yeah, this is an Ask a Drawn tree. I don't know which it is over here, but it is a tree for the Ask a Drawn. I don't know which one it is over here, but it's basically a little tree over here for the fonts over here. So I'm very interested to see. I heard that they're going to do some stuff for France and Britain, stuff for stuff for Intuitive for 2 now. So I wonder if this is going to be in it as well. Or it's going to be something different. But guys over here, this shit is fucking nice. I like this. I like the I want to thank all of the other stuff in over here. Like if any like Red Flood devs see this and see, I might have to get over to the 2-hour mark of me reading all of their ideology stuff over here. You guys have done a great job over here. You have made some good artwork and all that stuff though, and spent a lot of time over here making the ideology stuff over here. I'd like to give a round of applause. This round of applause over here. This shit is very fascinating over here. I'm very much excited for Brighter Memories and 242. I really want to play some stuff over here though. Like, I'm very excited for that shit over here, but yeah. Very much so. Thank you to all the artists out there. If anyone that's seen this over here, I'm amazed that you managed to do this. Nice to listen to me talk for 2 hours about the ideology and shit. Let me listen to my throat fucking die. Anyway, we have a few gun smoke over here. There, that shit over there. The scent of gasoline and the smell of man. Move slowly, reasserting authority over here. The stains, so the war on pacifism, cowardice, and ugliness. Over the loyalty, as many democracy, French pride worldwide. The French pride worldwide. With the Marxist, Bren, pervert, Bataille, nationalist, Agrarian, the lieutenant being, fuck, who was it? Plutocracy, was it, someone else? Can't remember. We got Saluz, Le Capitan. Stick around forevermore. Start the engine and spin the wheel. So this is very much so a little preview of things over here for the Ask Everyone stuff over here, dealing with various factions over here, dismantling the democracy. I'm assuming this is after the opponent gets assassinated and the Ask Everyone take over. They're gonna be doing some stuff over here, mainly to solidify the state over here, move to sloyalty, take care of trades, distance, all that stuff over here, dealing with the various factions over here, and then have themselves on top. So yeah, as I said before, thank you to everyone the Red Flood does over here. You guys have done some good work over here. Very excited to see what else is going to be coming to store over here. And my throat, holy shit, it hurts like a motherfucker. But I'm very much doing stuff over here. Hope you guys enjoy. I'll be talking for 2 hours. Oh boy. And once again, thank you to all the Red Left for doing this shit over here. And if you actually see stuff there, I'm fucking. I'll make sure if anybody actually watched this far over here, it's gonna be a journey. It's definitely gonna be a long video yet. So, with that, I shall see you guys whenever I do next. I am going to fucking not talk for a long while because holy shit. So yeah, bye.